Howdy, y'all. How's it going tonight? We're talking Ted Lasso, seasons 1 and 2. Joining me on our illustrious panel, talking about Ted Lasso before it enters its final season. A lot of tears will be shed, I'm sure. Is Jacob Weil
Yeah, hello everybody. Howdy, y'all.
and Coach Rohith Dar.
Wait, I'm not coach.
Well, oh, you don't. You have sensitive lips, so you can't blow the whistle. So you're the second. You're
Jacob's
right
the
under
kit man.
there.
Jacob's the kit man.
There you go.
Hey. Well, the Kit Man does become coach eventually, and
Yeah,
even though he does eventually betray the team, so there's that.
I gotta admit, I completely forgot that it's that Kitman's essentially Kitman is equipment manager, right?
Basically.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay, I
he's
forgot.
basically equipment manager, water boy, just basically a lackey.
Yeah,
For
all encompassing, just kind of
yeah.
like the gopher essentially. Okay. Yeah. So basically, folks, what happened is all of us have Ted Lasso was stirring up quite the buzz. I always kind of had a curiosity about it. I eventually, once I had access to Apple TV Plus, primarily for defending Jacob, not this Jacob, the show defending Jacob. And then, of course, you kind of stuck around for a while, and then I watched Ted Lasso. I was blown away by it. And heck, the only reason I really have Apple TV Plus at the moment is to watch the final season of Ted Lasso. So it was that good, and been aching to talk about it. Tiki has basically the same Apple TV Plus issues I had, only he has not cracked the solution yet. So luckily, these gentlemen here have been able to watch it, and they have thoughts on it. We're going to talk about it on the eve of the big season 3 premiere.
I just have a normal subscription. Plus, I got three. Plus, I have three months.
Right.
So
Some of us lucked out.
Yep.
All right, so I guess just kind of overall what we think on the show, so far with the 2 seasons that we do have. Rohit, would you like to go first? Because you actually have three of us here. You watched it like I'm assuming week to week, right?
Yes, I guess I'm the first season. No, I didn't have. I binge watched it leading up to the second season, and then the second season is where I watched week to week. So, but in terms of my, I guess you want to speak to my overall experience or feelings about the show. I don't know if you want me to go into like specifics.
Yeah, just get into like how you found it and how you feel about like kind of a thesis for the show overall. Yeah.
So my like awareness of Ted Lasso, I think, because Apple TV wasn't really a prominent streaming service. My family has always had like Apple Plus, just to iTunes and all that stuff. And I heard rumblings about this show, and it got to a point where like people raved of it. And weirdly enough, I watched like clips of the show on YouTube before actually watching like the first season. And then eventually, when we have Apple TV, I was like, well, why not? And like the second season coming out soon, I'll just binge watch it. And I just fell in love with the show and had the opportunity to watch the second season week to week. And now, in preparing for this recap podcast, I rewatched both season 1 and season 2. I unfortunately didn't have the chance to finish all of season 2, but I know not enough, and binge watching all of them in a row. It's very interesting to see sort of how the show's evolved and what things have changed and what things emphasized. And I'll say this: that the first season of Ted Lasso is one of the best seasons of television all around. It's got great writing, great humor, great drama. And in the second season, I think is weaker than the first season. And there's certain things that are lost and are not there in the second season that I hope the third season can re-energize and re-emphasize and thus, end it on a good note. Not to say the second season's bad or anything like that. I think there's just certain things I'll get when we get into more discussion between season 1 and season 2. I'll elaborate more on what and why I feel the second season's weaker.
Okay, I'm just going to kind of go in kind of reverse chronology. Well, I guess kind of somewhat a chronology here in terms of like he watched it week to week at least for the second season. I binged it. So what I did is I again once I was able to once I kind of finally took the plunge, I binged it all and then eagerly anticipated the third season in anticipation for the finding out, oh god, it's coming faster than you thought. I rewatched everything, and that brings us to that was a couple days ago. So here here I am. So yeah, Ted Lasso. This is a show that took the world by storm. From what I understand, it came just at the right time. If I have it right, this is the show that the show started in 2020, or at least it
Yeah,
premiered.
this was one of the shows that really got. That was one of the big hits of the pandemic when it
Yeah.
when it originally started. Yeah.
But I do think it's really kind of nice, and I think it speaks to the spirit of the show that the world's obviously going through a lot, and then Ted Lasso's there to put a smile on everyone's face while we're all in a very dour position. So again, just kind of it's we have like a high of highs in entertainment with Avengers Endgame, and then it's like, what are we gonna do now that bad stuff's happened? There's Ted Lasso to cheer you up in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this relentlessly it's relentlessly optimistic. It's just kind of like a relentlessly optimistic and kind of and feel good show without getting schmaltzy at all. Really, I think there's like
the term that I've heard that's been bandied about for shows like this, Parks and not Parks and Rec, The Good Place, just shows that are more on the optimistic end, or things like Paddington. The term I've heard used, and it's kind of a cool term, is hope punk, and basically the term is to describe a certain piece of media that has an outwardly optimistic and positive outlook, and it's kind of wielded or seen through a lens of resistance against sort of an overwhelming cynicism and darkness of the world. And I think Ted Lasso, especially just him coming to England and just his presence alone, resists and just kind of makes an impact upon his environment with the team and just with the town, with the people of Richmond.
Well, sure, that's great. I didn't know that we had like a term. What's the term again? Like hope punk?
Yes, like
hope
cyberpunk, steampunk. So hope punk is the
Huh, that's nice. I like that.
It is nice.
So, yeah. It's nice to we have a label for it finally. That's really cool because that does fit the Good Place in Paddington. I agree with that. It's good.
It is it's a positive label too.
I know, yeah, it's great. So that's the thing. So I think one of the great sells for me for this is I'm not at all a sports guy, and again, I think my broad just kind of like looking at the advertising and everything is like, oh, it's that I knew Jason Sudeikis from things mainly for his voice work in kind of the adult animated fare, and then of course he popped in the Horrible Bosses, Jason in his SNL stuff, but I didn't really follow his SNL stuff. Point being, I had some passing familiar with Sudeikis, and it was like, oh man, a soccer show? I don't know if but I think I think everyone's the instant reaction might be something like that before you actually look deeper and you kind of give it a shot and you hear all the buzz and say, oh man, it's for me, Ted Lasso, believe it or not, it was kind of a love-hate thing in the sense of for years of getting all the Emmys over Better Call Saul always ticked me off like, oh man, is this Ted Lasso show always gonna win? It's either that or Game of Thrones or something. It was always like usually between Ted Lasso and Game of Thrones, always getting the awards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was. It's the fact that it's a sports show without being a sports show at all, ultimately, which is a really good move. It's very smart about its character development and its the economic screen time that's at play here because Apple TV what they like to do is essentially 30 to 30 plus minutes an episode, which is they get a lot done in that time, knowing that they have like the breadth of episodes that tell their story, and they're going week to week, and it seems like that's been reflecting well so far. It's been keeping people coming back. I think it's the best thing I've ever seen Sudeikis do. I think it's like in terms of acting, this is something I like to see with some of the great comedy actors that we've seen on stuff like Better Call Saul, and even on time like Home Improvement with Tim Allen at times. Where I like the thing I really love to see is a comedic actor getting to play layers and playing dramatic moments and getting getting to play with drama because it's like the inverse of the old adage. It's not the inverse. It's like the old adage. That dying is easy, comedy's hard, sort of thing. So it's like the drama is the thing that fits like a glove, but the fact that we're kind of walking a tightrope here and we're playing layers and we're allowing just genuine kind of heart and emotion and pathos to kind of take form in the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, Dad did that like Bryan Cranston going from Malcolm in the Middle to Breaking Bad. So there's certainly a great precedence for this. And Jason Sudeikis, what's funny, I don't know if you're familiar with sort of the origins of the show. Blue Dragon, but originally,
Very recently, actually, I became somewhat familiar with it. Why don't you tell the folks?
So to explain, so Ted Lasso, the character, was originally, I think it was probably like several years ago. So in promotion of like a Euro soccer championship, or something league, in that field, um, Jason Sudeikis created this character called Ted Lasso, who the whole conceit, the whole gimmick of it was that he was just an American brought over from good old USA to England to coach like soccer or football, and the whole shtick of it was that he just was so like American and ignorant about like European football and just culture, and just was like it was just basically people reacting and kind of making fun of the dumb American thing.
Yeah,
And then a few years later, Jason Sudeikis alongside
Bill
uh,
Lawrence.
who is the creator of Scrubs,
Mm-hmm.
and Brendan Hunt, who plays Coach Beard.
Yep.
They then change this character up and make a show where it's like, okay, let's have this guy who maybe not the most culturally aware of England, but he has something special and had let that specialist kind of, influence the people around him. And thus, is the phenomena that is Ted Lasso.
Yeah, let's take the surface level cell and then add depth to it. Essentially, it was kind of like, how can we get a show? Like, how the heck, if we were to get a show out of this, how could you possibly get a show out of a very one note premise? And that's kind of
Which is kind of sort of, in a way, very SNL, because you know how a lot of like the SNL comedies in the 90s.
Yeah, you get the Coneheads movie, for example.
Yeah, or Night at Roxbury or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And instead of just making like, all right, let's just make a big movie about it, with just that caricature. It's like, all right, let's just make a TV show where that caricature actually is like a human being that changes and grows and makes the impact upon people.
Sure. Anyway, yeah. So Jacob, how now, Jacob, you have the freshest experience of the bunch of us here. With like you freshly binged Ted Lasso for the first time. How do you feel about it?
Well, I guess I can talk about how I felt going into it first. Like, obviously, I had been aware of this series for quite a long time, and I probably heard it during the review sessions and during the awards seasons. And I think I was more from, and I think I had heard, like you mentioned, Jason Sudeikis when he appeared with guest starred in that episode of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Like, so I was like, I was vaguely familiar with Jason Sudeikis before, even though I could never put the name to the face, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But so I was like, I have heard about this, and I didn't really pay much thought to it, pretty much like Dragon did, until basically just recently, and I have always heard good things about it, and I've always been curious about giving it a shot, and basically these guys deciding to do this thing a few days ago basically gave me the impetus to watch it. And I gotta say, I'm quite impressed with it so far. Like I was really impressed by how deftly it landed. Like I love the series definitely has a charm almost unlike any other almost like any other I've seen, kind of like almost like a homegrown charm, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like it's like obviously like kind of like you can embody like this. He's just this guy who's like, obviously there's more layers to him, but he's just this man who's just like trying to do the best he can in an unfamiliar situation. It's like a quintessential fish out of water kind of story. Like,
yeah,
coaching the different kind, the other football, if you will.
Yeah.
I was endeared by the characters. I liked the conceit, and even told Dragon early on. It's like I was watching. I was like, I wonder what the whole angle here is. Like, oh, it's like a springtime for Hitler gambit. And even that eventually got turned on its head as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I must say I was quite impressed with how it turned out. I will agree with Rohith. Like so far, the second season has probably had more misses than it has hits, but all in all, I still think it. But it did definitely. But I think it had higher highs overall. But I think the lows are still a bit lower overall. But
So I'm sorry, Jay, but I didn't mean to interrupt. Just you made me think of it. I think deep down, I think the reason that Ted Lasso really worked for me is I think because of the whole punk kind of quality of it. It reminds me of the show I adored that unfortunately got canceled after 2 seasons. It was wonderful. It had an ending though, so at least it ended on Kidding, the Jim Carrey shows on Showtime, which has again it has the cynicism in there. Basically, he's combating the cynicism, so but he is not like waver at all in that. So all that's. So I think there was like some of the DNA of the quality I really liked in that I think is just all over the place in Ted Lasso. I think kind of adds to that charm you're speaking of.
Yeah, I can see that. Honestly, I can't speak to Kidding because I haven't
Right.
I haven't actually seen that. But
Yeah.
if it's anything like this, I might actually like to give it a try.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, that said, let me. So broadly, folks, I think what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of break it up into 2 chapters. Season 1, season 2, and we're going to kind of mainly reflect on kind of like the big story arcs, the big story points of the seasons, just to kind of recap and kind of reflect on them. So I think the place to start, just briefly, would be again just the ingenious yet simple premise of it all. We basically took the pun of like he's a football coach going to England, so he's still a football coach. Just turned a bad joke into quite the show.
Yep, I mean, although obviously some artistic license is involved because even if the person running it was desperate to run the club into the ground, they would still need to hire a coach that had some accreditation in European football.
Yeah. Well, let's throw the thing up just so the kids at home, if they want to skip around, they can follow.
All right, that brings us to season 1.
There we go. Yes. So so this whole thing is kind of designed again, as Jacob laid out with the Springtime for Hitler comparison. This is kind of the producer scamming, kind of scam at work here. Where Rebecca, who runs the Richmond team, she's trying to get back at her cheating husband's Rupert, isn't it? Wait,
Yep, Rupert.
yeah, Rupert. Making sure. Okay. Yes, so she's getting back at her cheating husband and basically encouraging, kind of behind the scenes, encouraging the failure. What she thinks is going to be the utter failure of Ted Lasso. Just embrace. I'm going to hire a guy on a joke and just see what happens and let it like just play it like, oh no, I fully support this guy. It's a very cruel thing to do with the Ted specifically. Is using him as a pawn. You feel really it's very interesting to kind of set that up right from the get go, where she is rooting for this nice, kindly man to fail.
Like it does. I just like how the show kind of like goes out of your way early on to like tell you like why Rebecca's doing it, but you're not exactly rooting for her to succeed in that.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's fun fact. Rupert is played by Anthony Head, who also played Rupert Giles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So that's
very fitting.
Yeah. And plays a much nicer and better. And man, I'll say this: upon rewatching the show, just for this, Rupert is a piece of work.
He is. I mean, the big moment where he's like he has a baby with another woman, and that really hurts Rebecca because it feels like she really wanted that, and he just would not give it to her. That's awful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, the old Rebecca thing too. That's really mean.
I'll say starting off, what I really appreciate, I think, what really set the tone, is the fact that Ted Lasso is like well read, which is something that's not expected of someone of his particular quote-unquote background as like a D2 football coach that's from Kansas.
Yeah. Yeah, making him kind of a loudmouth idiot would have fed into kind of the parody, but I can't even say it's so weird. I'm saying the parody of Ted Lasso, where technically it was the genesis.
Yeah.
So yeah, it very easily could have been very surface level, but again, Ted Lasso is referencing. Ted Lasso is in this perfect space where he references both pop culture, but he's also very well read on all the ins and outs of things. As he just coins it very well in the moment, and leads to the inspiring speeches so flawlessly.
He basically his inspirational speeches are peppered full of references and all kinds of like colloquialisms and stuff like that. And even begins to adapt it to more British styles, but never losing his American touch.
I like that Ted Lasso's biggest strength as a coach that we see at play, especially in the first season, is the X factor for him and why he was presumably, I think the impression, I could be wrong, Rohit, so correct me. I think the impression is that he was at the top of his coaching game in Kansas, perhaps
Yeah,
because I think
he got a D2 team that's never won a championship to winning a championship within the first year of being head coach.
that makes sense, like an on-paper reason to get this guy. So if there is any skepticism publicly, there at least is like she can hide behind that. Well, he got them, he helped them out.
Yeah, and which like, and considering Richmond is not even like hasn't like done well for the past like several years or several decades, like that there is sort of an unorthodox logic approach that can be appreciated. It's like, well, if we can't need good soccer coaches, let's just get a good coach in any sport.
I think it's twofold. I think it's on one part, it's that Ted's biggest strength is that he team builds, and I think that's why he achieves success, and that's why, obviously, as we see through the 2 seasons, he really rallies the troops in a really good way. The second thing is, I think what we're saying is like, I think there might be a message of like, sometimes the rich and the upper class, especially the ones who buy. I'm not critiquing Ryan Reynolds or Rob McElhenney for doing this lately, the whole Wrexham thing. But I just like that it's sort of like like sometimes the rich will just buy things that have their names on it, and it feels like they don't really care about the players or the team. It's just like, yeah, I own a football league now.
It's kind of funny that the whole Ryan Reynolds thing was actually mentioned in the show itself.
I know, I love that so much.
And the penultimate episode of season 2 actually involved a rich person trying to buy one of the players.
Yep, and both of them have have Apple projects. Of course, Ryan Reynolds with Spirited and McElhenney with Mythic Quest.
Nice.
No, it's all relative, kids. All right.
Just like everybody here has an Apple product.
Yeah.
Like everybody's computer is an Apple. All their phones are iPhones.
Yeah. Well, again, to be fair, this is so pathetic. The only reason I can watch Apple TV Plus, the way I finally cracked is I have to use I have to get a code through the iPod.
All right. I mean, like I said, I subscribe to it regularly, but I got three free months when I bought a new iPad.
I don't want to just get us bogged down here. It's just the fact that Apple, it's like so many people, like Dig and myself, are like, guys, just let us give you our money so we can subscribe to the thing or give it a shot. But again, it takes all this maneuvering. You have to have an Apple device. I don't know. It just feels weird. But especially when they added to like an on-demand feature, like, yeah, you can click on it. Nope, you still got to sign use that Apple device.
I have an Apple device, but I didn't. Yeah. But I have Apple TV on my actual TV on my Fire Stick.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, it's the sign-in thing, Jacob. But let's not get bogged down in technical semantics because we're going to lose people. So
I know, but like I said, everybody has an Apple product in this show, so
that's true.
Yeah, it's like get out of bounds or offsides, as the British say it.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's see. So again, Ted,
right.
Go on.
Right, so I said I just love the whole concept, like how we're immediately kind of endeared to Ted and Coach Beard.
Yeah, of course. I think right from the get-go, from the first episode, I think it was such a cute idea that it's the beard and the mustache.
Even though Beard also has a bit of a mustache.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying, literal beard.
I know.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that. You get a sense.
Well, remember his name's not Ted Mustache.
I know, but still, just visually, the mustache and the beard.
Is that mustache naturally Jason Sudeikis, or is that?
I'm pretty. Yeah, I think it's a natural.
Yeah. All right, it's a dang good mustache.
I think he shaves in between seasons, but it is
It is a dang good mustache, though.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So, so Coach Beard, I think what he brings to the table is he brings strategy, and he also he supports Ted.
And through his cryptic wisdom.
Yes, and the cryptic wisdom, but he also we have a big moment in this season where I think one of Coach Beard's biggest moments in the series where he I just love it when they're in the pub and he says, "Yes, it is." He just says the whole, "Win's not everything." Yes, it is. And just talks, basically confronts him with the fact of it was a really good moment where he confronts him like, you can't make a choice out of friendship. You're their coach. You got to make a choice that actually benefits the team as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Basically saying that those were kids when we said winning didn't matter. These are professionals, and they make money off of this.
There you go. Yes, I think a lot of people have been touting this up, and I think they're absolutely right about it. I love that there is kind of a layer of kind of like, especially in the modern things that we get now. We kind of look at masculinity then, masculinity today, and I think we have a thing where Ted Lasso is a smart guy, but also not just this. Well, he's a smart guy emotionally and how he handles the players and everything, and especially how he gives life advice. And it's not ham-fisted, it's not spoon-feeding. It's just like the woman up gag, for example. You gotta, don't you mean man up? No, you've been trying that. Look where it's got you. You got a woman up. You gotta change your approach. You're basically not being super aggressive and stuff. And kind of like, I don't know. There's like somewhat of a. And these guys are like, they're not touchy-feely, but they are very open with their
They
communication.
they have like a Mr. Rogers sense,
Yeah.
but for they're it's like Ted Lasso is like Mr. Rogers.
I could honestly see Jason Sudeikis play Mr. Rogers.
Well, I have Mr. Rogers' point. I'm going to get into right after after Rohith continues with his excellent point.
Yeah, and as such, I think for Ted, the way I think part of it's like he's from like Jason Sudeikis and Dustin, the character are both from the Midwest, and there's always kind of the the stereotype or sort of the feeling of charm, having the Midwestern accent, and I think what also makes Ted likable is just kind of how like it's kind of like he gives off like a Robin Williams energy.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of on brand. It's like it's an energy, obviously not the same sound, but yeah, it's an energy.
Yeah, and just in the more the physical mannerisms, also just like kind of the pratfalls, the physical comedy of it.
Yeah.
I think just like makes him like, oh, he's just kind of like a lovable scamp,
Like I think one of the cutest running gags in the show is Higgins, who is a wonderful character in this show. I love me some Higgins. I can't get enough, especially on the rewatch. Higgins is the bomb, man.
Higgins is just delightful.
He is. So I love this when Higgins senses like there's like even like a hint of tension in the air or something. Higgins will like he'll call out like a joke or a pun or something in relation to the situation. And I just love this. Ted leaves the. I think it's when Rebecca, if I recall, I think it's the first season when Rebecca like got rid of Jamie when he didn't appreciate that right when he was making the breakthrough. I could be wrong, but she does something like that. Ted leaves the room and he makes a like a pun, and Ted bursts through the room.
They're like having salads for lunch later, and it's like, I'll Caesar you later.
He's like,
Yep.
yes.
Yes, he's bursting the room and he points at him in a very approving way, like yes.
He does the same thing in the second season when Sharon leaves too.
Yeah.
And then it's like I forget exactly.
Don't let her get away, Ted.
And he's like Ted. It turns out Ted just can't resist a good pun.
He goes in there, he takes the letter reluctantly because it's like, oh, Higgins nailed it. He can't not get that letter now.
It's like, Ted Lasso can't resist a good pun.
I love it. I just love it. Again, they gotta make a joke about this later in season 2. It's just Ted Lasso is all about the dad joke because he is a dad, man.
Yeah, he may be a couple thousand miles away from his son, but he's still a dad nonetheless.
We're gonna get to the dad stuff a little more because I think there is he's a father figure to a lot of people in the show, particularly certain members of the team, but specifically though. To Mr. Rogers' point.
And considering his own father, what happened with his own father, it's easy to see why.
Oh, yeah, we'll get into that with season 2, but yes. I want to talk about Trent Krim.
The Independent.
Yes, Trent Krim, the Independent. This brings up, on the rewatch especially, this guy has I love the episode. I think it's like episode 3 or 4. It's early on.
Which is just called Trent Krim, the Independent.
Exactly. So, Trent Krim, you have the Independent is this great mouthpiece for the likability of Ted Lasso. I love how he has this Tom Junab, Mr. Rogers outing with him, where he's shadowing him for the day, much like Tom Junab, the reporter, went around with I know a lot of kids right now are shouting, "It's Lloyd Vogel." No, kids, that was the movie. They couldn't use the same name, but yes, it's the same story. Anyway, point being. Tom Junod followed Mr. Rogers, and he was utterly charmed by like thinking he somewhat had not an aggressive agenda, but he was like rolling his eyes, thinking, "Okay, this guy can't possibly be as nice as he seems to be," and he is genuinely moved, and he's rooting for Ted. And I love the Indian food gag where it's like Ted, he just sees him put himself through so much anguish, so he won't hurt the Indian guy's, the guy who runs the Indian restaurant's feelings. He gives him all the curry and everything.
The ending of that speech of that article I really enjoyed. It's like I may have been expecting him to leave, him to crash and burn, but I'm not rooting for it.
I know, yeah.
I know I've kind of butchered that. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but
Oh, it's close enough though. It's yeah.
Basically, he's saying that he was anticipating it, but he's not rooting for it.
Yeah, it's
which is basically a nice way of wording that Ted Lasso kind of won him over.
I know, which I just think is lovely. And on the rewatch, especially knowing what happens in season 2, it's like, oh man, there is such a solid arc on Trent Krim and that little kind of little respectable friendship between them.
The Independent.
So Trent Krim, the Independent.
I love the comment made by Ted and Beard where it's like, Trent, you're just kind of like those little robots that roam around, Roombas, just looking for dirt.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of easy. It's kind of funny and kind of fun and also heartwarming to see just Trent Krim, the Independent.
Yep, Trent Krim, the Independent.
Won over by Ted and Beard's charm.
I love also that he has like this lion's mane of hair. I don't know why. He has a very distinct looks every time he stands up during a little press cat. I was like, oh yeah, there he is with the flourish.
And of course, we'll get more into what we see with Trent Krim, the Independent, in season 2.
He's got a beautiful moment in season 2. He's not even in the scene. He's got a beautiful moment. He's not even physically there.
He does appear in like one earlier scene though, which is
no, he does. I'm just saying, I love that. Like in the scenes, literally the scenes where he's not there, so much is conveyed.
Yeah, I know, but
it's crazy. Like he's an empty chair, and then he's a text, and I'm so moved by it.
Yeah, but what can we say about Trent Krim, the Independent? He's a great guy.
Yeah, so I want to make something. I really appreciate him willing to explain the plot synopsis of A Wrinkle in Time to Roy.
That's actually like where he and Ted first kind of bonded. Right?
And then like Roy's comments like you want me to be the little girl? It's like and Ted's like, I like you to be. One thing I really, in regards to your point, we were talking about team building. I think the scene where they Ted gets to get gifts for all his players in the old books is really interesting, especially what books he gets for for the 3 main people, Sam, Jamie, and Roy. For
Roy Kent.
Yeah, for Jamie, the book is like F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Beautiful and the Damned. From what I understand, it's a book about like this couple that's based on F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife, Zelda, and they're, just going through sort of harrowing times and living in decadence and just, living in sort of excess and whatnot. So I wonder for like Ted, his sort of hope was that, Jamie, being someone who's so full of himself and full of the glamour and celebrity of sports, could learn about the pitfalls of that and become a much more humble person.
I think that was absolutely intentional.
Yeah, and then for Sam, Ender's Game is a very interesting choice because if anything, you would think that would be a book that would be more fitting for, say, Nate, considering especially in light of the Wonder Kid comments in the second season. But at the same token, Ender's Game I think is very apt for Sam because if nothing else, Sam is probably a character that represents youth in terms of his outlook, in terms of just like his energy, and Ender's Game being sort of this young kid that grows and matures to be like a capable leader and a capable military mind. I think very much kind of foretells sort of Sam's arc throughout the 2 seasons, from him being this like very young, foreign player to be in a much more established and much more, adult capacity, especially with the big decision he makes at the end of season 2.
Oh yeah.
And then for
One
Roy,
could argue he and Nate kind of have like a kind of a boy to man journey. One could say.
Except one obviously takes it more positively than the other.
Yeah, there you go.
what's interesting for me, speaking of Nate, I feel like for me, Nate and Higgins are like the two ends of the spectrum in regards to being like the nerdy, put upon, dork, in the sense that like Higgins, I'll get more into this. When you see scenes with Higgins, how he acts and how he interacts, and how he fears himself versus like Nate, you can very much tell sort of the seeds for where Nate's character goes into the second season based upon things in the first season. And
They're,
I think
they're, they're, really kindred spirits in a way.
I think I missed Higgins picking up on that.
no, not Higgins picking up, but no. What I'm saying is that like there are things in Nate's like interactions, just the way he acts in this first season that's complete opposite of how Higgins acts, and that very much foretells like how Nate would turn out to be at the end of the second season.
Oh, okay, I got
Yeah.
you. Yeah. One of my favorite things with Higgins, by the way, I love that. I love seeing his home life. I love the fact he's got like 5 sons, and like they're most of them are grown and everything. One of them's like a priest, I think, or something,
I love the line where
like a
it's
vicar.
yeah, I love the line where his wife is like, when you have your first child out of wedlock, you can when you have your first child out of wedlock, you really get to explore life's gray areas.
Yeah,
I just love how it's a hat. I just love how happy of a family they are.
that's the thing. They're a happy family. His wife loves him to pieces, and like F the boss, man. Like I hope your boss dies.
Yeah, and it's kind of they're like the Weasleys to a certain extent.
Do a bit, yeah. I guess, yeah.
I mean, especially with the fact that like they have a very relatively modest home, and I think that's kind of the trope. It's like the modest family that just has ample richness and love.
I mean, that is a very apt comparison to compare the Higginses to the Weasleys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about.
I just love how delightful the whole family is, though.
Yeah, they're great, and of course the fact that Higgins arc in the first season is very interesting because again he goes from a place of this poor guy is it's honestly it's a sense of this guy was in a gray area because he supported supported Rupert who did terrible stuff to Rebecca. He didn't say a word, and like Rebecca was friends with Higgins. Man, she trusted Higgins and she felt really betrayed by him as well. But she keeps him around as a form of punishment. And ultimately, he's like when he quits. That's kind of the wake up call. You have to make things right with Ted Lasso, man, because you're doing them dirty right now.
Yeah, because immediately after Higgins leaves, then Keeley comes in with the photo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I like that Higgins. If Higgins doesn't approve, you screwed up. I like that. Like that Higgins is kind of like even though he did something kind of sleazy. That's what I'm saying. We have great arcs and developments for these characters where Higgins did something kind of again not malicious, but he did something again. It was kind of like a non-helpful bystander sort of thing,
Yeah, but he did. But he
neglectful.
But he's more than making up to it, and it helps that he actually built a solidarity with Beard and Lasso as well.
Yeah, it wasn't good. He gives pep talks while holding puppies.
I mean, he's one of the Diamond Dogs.
That's what I'm saying, man. Who actually holds dogs?
Yeah, I mean, Higgins, I think, was interesting. He doesn't really go through. I mean, he has the arc.
He doesn't go through windows that much. Sorry.
No. But like Higgins, like it's interesting that throughout the 2 seasons, like he has the change in sort of like helping out Rebecca to being on Ted's side fully and openly, and Higgins doesn't really not like he's a stagnant character, but what's interesting about Higgins in terms of his journey is less about him changing as a person and just more about people changing their recognition of Higgins as someone that's just like at Rebecca's side to be just someone that like people go out of their way to spend time with and recognize. And I think the Christmas episode is a good example of like the team, like Richmond, recognizing like the value of Higgins in his life.
Yeah.
He basically went from like Rebecca's gopher to being a valued member of the staff.
Yeah. Yeah, he's literally home base for everyone.
It's like he almost becomes almost like one of the sounding boards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I want to mention. So let's dig into a little bit of the Rebecca stuff here. So, one, I love biscuits with the boss, and I love how early on we get it. I just love the idea of like pretty much. I think it's like episode 2. Like we start off with the whole biscuits with the boss thing, where it's like Ted has found a way to kind of talk with Rebecca, and I think that's very intentional because obviously in our premise, Rebecca and Ted are very reliant upon each other for her purposes and why she's brought Ted over and everything, and mainly throughout the first season. We definitely pick back. It's definitely there in season 2 in very specific moments, but all throughout season 1, I think there is a parallel between Ted and Rebecca. And then, of course, we wonderfully pay this off in the All Apologies episode, where we have the moment where we see she actually feels guilt and remorse ultimately. And she charges down there to Ted's office. And I think this is like the Emmy moment of season 1 for me. Seriously, it's just this beautiful moment where she confesses everything to Ted. And his response is just gold, man. It's solid 24 karat gold, where he just says, "Divorce is hard. Divorce is hard. I forgive you." And that's that hug and that release, and like that's like the optimistic, just kind of like thing of like what we need to do more of in the world, And the fact that a lot of people have praised the show, but I think it's absolutely justified, where it said the show takes a lot of left turns from what we do in the conventional sense, where it's you're rolling your eyes, you're dreading whenever you're watching a show. And this is like before the advent of streaming, they would do this stuff always. But now in the advent of streaming, I think it kind of goes hand in hand because you need to make every episode count if you're doing it right. And it's like, hey, let's not drag out Ted feeling betrayed for a few episodes. Let's not do the love triangle between Jamie Keeley, and Roy. Let's not do that. Let's not drag things out. If we're gonna do like the liar reveal thing, we're gonna make it kind of like build to a point where she would have to just go and tell him. It's like all this makes sense, and I love
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Ted kind of suspected it or anything, but I mean I don't think it's ever implied. But do you think he ever suspected something weird was going on?
I mean, I think Ted's smart enough that he could, but honestly, I don't think he suspected it, but I think in that moment he probably put 2 and 2 together once she told him the whole all the losses. That probably
he probably put together that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So
that's what I think. I think he kind of took it that way. Also, I love the reveal at the end of that Biscuits to the Boss episode, where she's going around trying to find out how to make her own biscuits, and she can't because Ted every morning he bakes the biscuits,
and he actually can't. And I love when he lets it slip. I finally finished the recipe. I finally perfected the recipe.
It's like, you know what? I hope you don't enjoy them, but I finally got them right. I love even when he was having an off day. He put salt there instead of sugar. They were still good.
Yeah, you can't help but love the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the whole baking thing I really appreciate because the things that makes Ted stand out, him being well read, him being a good baker, those are things you don't really associate with Midwestern white guy in his 40s or so. And I think that goes into the disarming effect that people get from Ted, because he isn't such a walking stereotype. He has layers, and I think the way Jason Sudeikis plays his character in both seasons, there's a level of warmth and every time Ted interacts with another person, you always get the feeling that Ted is just wanting to make friends with anyone he talks to.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's actually talk about some of the central figures in the Richmond club.
Sure. Also, I love the fact that Ted hates tea with a burning passion.
And he's honest. At least he's honest about it too. He doesn't choke it down out of politeness. He's like, I don't know, that stuff's garbage.
There are 2 things that Ted Lasso can't stand. He can't stand tea, and he can't stand fizzy water.
Or sparkling water.
Yeah. Sparkling water, yeah.
He drank it during the first interview. I was like, I'm sorry, I did not expect that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the other Richmond members of the Richmond team.
The great Roy Kent.
Yeah. Yeah, so of course, honestly, I think the best way I could summarize Roy Kent is he's the Fonzie of Ted Lasso. You know, it's Brett Goldstein. He's very much the breakout star. I think he's one of the writers and producers of it. I forget if it's funny. He show runs Shrinking on with Jason Segel. So I forget how involved he is in this show in those capacities because we have Coach Beard as one of the. Is he also a showrunner or is he just like one of?
I think he is a showrunner and or create one of the creators. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so one being Brett Goldstein, he's killing it right now, man. People love him, and I obviously see why. I mean, my read on Roy Kent is that he's basically a parody of Vinnie Jones, and I love Vinnie Jones, and that cracks me up. It's just the fact you have this like the toughest customer, the toughest customer. He's a classic like the tough guy, footballer, and the fact that he's got this soft spot for his niece Phoebe, and he does. It's the fact that he's so well rounded. He's got like he does yoga with like middle aged old ladies, and he swears constantly. It's just a wonderful conflict of what you like, conflicting things of what you expect from this guy. He's just remarkably well adjusted despite the tough guy visage that he puts out there. It's not like he's like just putting on for a show. He is that tough guy, but tough guys have layers.
Yeah, he's kind of like as sort of people kind of describe Roy. He is like this, big grizzly. He's a bear who's both a grizzly bear and a teddy bear.
Yeah, and I think the funniest line in the entire show for me, I gotta be honest. Oh, look at you! You look like a brunette Oscar the Grouch.
And one of the lines I really love in relation to when it's like when Ted like said something to him, he's like, "You make it so hard to love you."
And he's like he's doing like a little magic trick when he throws like the captain thing, basically forcing him to pick a captain on the team. And
I love like the dialogue between Ted and Beard when it's like when they realize they have to win over Roy, and it's like, oh, he's gonna get mad when he starts to like us, and it's like, and
Yep.
Beard's line is like, he'll be furious.
and then it's right. You make it so hard to love you. It's like, you hear that, right? They're like, he loves you.
It's adorable. It's so I love they're so giddy about. Oh, Roy likes us now.
It's like Roy came around.
He did. So I love that. So initially he's scoffing at Ted Lasso. He thinks he's a joke. He's looking at him on the surface level, but ultimately he respects him for the choice. Like for example, like the big thing that Ted Lasso did, I think, really caught Roy's attention is that he didn't just bow down to Jamie Tart. He handled him, and I think he really respected that because he hates Jamie Tart with a burning passion.
Let's talk about Jamie.
That's a good point. Yeah. So Jamie Tart. So Jamie is interesting because it's Ted dealing with the bully of the team, and this guy really is a bully, especially poor Sam.
And that's saying something because almost everyone on the team is kind of a jackass.
Well, yeah, exactly. The arrogance of youth. But yeah. But Jamie's very like Jamie. It's funny. I don't know, Jacob. I don't think you saw the Rohith. Did you see the Christmas thing? The little Rankin Bass Christmas special they did. They go with the Christmas episode. It's like on YouTube.
No, I did not.
Yeah, it's really cute. And there's like this gag that basically Jamie's in like the stop motion kind of Rankin Bass animation. He has like a mirror on him at all times.
Oh,
it's really funny. Anyway, so that kind of summarizes Jamie in that he's the selfish pretty boy of the team, but and he's also very dumb. He's not wearing shirts to events. He's like one of those celebrities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he spilled the sauce on it, and even Roy's like, that's one reason why shirts were invented.
Great.
Although in fairness, you can just wipe that out, and there's no stains left on his skin. So
except burn marks now.
The sauce is not hot enough to leave.
Well, I know he just said it was hot, so I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, even if it doesn't leave a stain, it's hot. Something that's hot still hurts when it lands on your skin.
Right. Anyway, so it's nice that again. So Ted doesn't treat him like a star, and again, it's kind of one. I don't know. Some could possibly say again, it's kind of like a culture clash of kind of had the way kind of a way we treat U.S. players versus UK players. Kind of a lesson in kind of manners and sort of teamwork, basically mostly team building. I mean, manners and team building stuff. Like, it's basically this guy's not listening to the whole "there's no I in team" message at all, and Ted's just the guy to bring that to the team.
It's like there's no I in team, but there's a me in there.
Yeah. So I love that.
You just need to rearrange the letters a little bit.
God. So the root of Jamie's issues that we tee up really wonderfully in the first season. Now we explore a little bit more, and I wonder if we're going to push any further in season 3 with Jamie. Is that he gets. I love how he built up his father. His father's like yelling at him, like Ted's like going to say hello to his friend Jamie after a game well played at the end of the first season, and he sees his father just utterly verbally abusing him and throwing stuff at him, and Ted, and they have this look of just utter pity and kind of sadness for between Ted and Jamie as he leaves. And this again, so Ted very much is the father figure to Jamie. It feels like, where he's the guy giving him this love and support. He feels a little betrayed when Rebecca, basically gives him back to the other team.
Manchester,
yes, to Manchester. And I think that really hurts him, because he was really starting to get to like Ted and kind of see him potentially as that father figure, and leads to a lot of conflict within him when he sees that Ted's still saying nice things about him, and he just can't accept that given how horrible his home life is, or at least his home life was.
Mind games.
That army man gesture, man, is so beautiful to me, where he gives him that little army man with the binocular, so it's like the coach on the sidelines watching you from afar. It's really cute.
I love Sam's polite refusal of the army man. It's like imperialism. It's like,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, let's see. So, I guess back to Roy and factoring the Keeley of it all. Let's talk about Keeley a little bit here. So, I like that it's again, it's a very natural relationship, despite the potential minefield of a love triangle that we circumvent rather well. We even kind of start with the bumpy start of Jamie basically moves on within a day, and she like right before Roy asks her out, like she I think has sex with Jamie like the day before or something.
One interesting thing is it doesn't really portray Jamie as wrong for seeing somebody else after she broke up with him.
No, true. It's just the fact that I don't know. It's not flattering on his character when she walks in, like, because she's still in his life. So it's the fact that, man, you really couldn't at least hid this a little bit naturally.
I know it's not flattering, but it doesn't really portray him as being in the wrong, though.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's the thing. She ended again. She justified the end of it too, because this guy again was not really. And again, I'm
not saying she was right in dumping him, because she's totally right in dumping him.
Yeah. So I love, of course, the Diamond Dogs. Really are in large part responsible for Roy and Keeley getting together as well. So again, Ted has kind of helped Roy in his personal life, additionally as well. So the Diamond Dogs, of course, is this idea of the male think tank of essentially who will become the coaching squad of the team, and Higgins. It's essentially what it is. Essentially, the coaches and Higgins. Just going to help do that. And also, I like that Keeley has that friendship with Rebecca, which then, of course, kind of throws the whole paparazzi thing in her face.
Yeah,
all works out there. Let's see. Okay, the big thing there's one big thing we really do need to talk about with Roy, and I think we're almost to the end of season 1. The big plot point storyline, the big story arc of the season, ultimately is we build up Roy Tam. We were really loving watching him. We've kind of had moments like Nate the Great, for example. Nate has that big confrontation with Roy when he basically in the locker room, he tells him, it's a really well played scene. He basically spells out like, Roy, you got to let out that anger on the field. You got to mad everything. I'm not seeing that on the field. I'm worried what bottling up's going to do to you inside. It's a real concern that Nate showed him, and I think he really, really liked that. Also, like, Roy was looking out for Nate too when he was being bullied by Jamie and the gang. He was looking out for him. There's a lot of respect there. And what I'm getting at is that we've set up Roy as kind of a beloved character, and we have a reality that Ted has to confront as a coach, in which Roy, I mean, again, he's not an old man by any stretch, but his body in the league, the league of athleticism, he is getting old. He's getting up there, and he is not able to do what he used to do, and everyone knows it. And Ted's got to make a choice, and Roy is fighting that for all he's got. And he's viewing this as a betrayal and everything. So it's the whole loyalty and support versus a coach making the hard call. How did you guys feel about that whole like how we did this Roy story and how the resolution of that came about?
Roy story.
Roy's story. Put a hat on him.
Like on body and butt. As a body made of cloth.
You gotta show this plastic at times.
It's like now's not the time. Yeah, I really liked how they handled the whole story with Roy and Keely and everything.
I appreciated Roy. I appreciated sort of the show, and it's like it's kind of dressed in some parts in some sports like fiction, films, TV or whatnot, and the idea of sort of the aging athlete, and even though like Roy doesn't like make like a goal or anything like that, the way he goes out in a way that like with a level of respect. And the
Yeah.
fact that Keely, comes in when he's at his most vulnerable point is just like, oh, that's just good writing.
Yeah, it was again, I just love that we kind of built that was like I think the penultimate episode when we did that with Roy, if memory serves. And I thought it was great that we kind of waited until then.
Mhm.
And it was I think it was like the big test of the season for Ted, followed by, like literally basically we kind of, if you think about it, when we get to the last episode, we took all the best players off the team because there's no
Mhm.
Roy and there's no Jamie, and then we have like literally just what does Ted have in his corner? Well, he's got the teamwork, team building. We're gonna see how successful
We
he's
got
been.
Danny and Sam, but that's like
Yeah. So it's just the fact that he's basically it's like we see what strategies that he employs, and we have like basically the chaos thing where he basically uses all these made up like wacky tactics to basically throw the other team off.
And
Which is rather clever.
and it actually worked for a bit.
Yeah, for a bit it did, yeah. So yeah, and of course ultimately that we kind of almost do the Rocky thing where I mean they got close to winning, but they wait, did they I'm blanking on this. They didn't win, right?
No,
no,
the goal was to tie,
Right.
and then they actually did score the goal. But while they were celebrating, Man
Oh,
United,
right.
Man United, kind of swooped in and scored again.
That's what okay, thank you. Okay, that's right. Yeah, so let's see. I guess okay. The other thing we should talk about, this is going to be a huge part of season 2, so we should talk about this now. The Ted's panic attacks. So we begin in the first season. We go to Liverpool and we have the Iron Giant gag in that episode. We have all these grown players, and I just love that Ted knows that when he shows them this movie, they're gonna they're gonna go to tears like the hour 40 something mark.
yeah, at the 73-74 minute mark, like there'd
Yeah.
be a bunch of grown men crying, and Beard's like, and I believe one of them.
I love it. And we're hearing like you are who you choose to be right before he gets the sack. Oh god, it's wonderful.
Superman.
So I love that. Anyways, in that episode, at the end after the
Which is
victory,
actually kind of a interesting movie to play in that show, because considering the themes of like father son masculinity and all that stuff, like Hogarth in that movie doesn't have like an active doesn't have a dad, and so like the Iron Giant and like the art guy
Dean.
Dean, they kind of are his surrogate father figures in that movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely for sure. Yeah, which does. Yeah, there's certainly that, and there's also again, I think it's I think deep down it's just like showing that from from across the pond. If you're the players, skeptical players in the UK, oh my god, there's such surprises and pathos in this American content. Look at this.
Well, and considering, I mean, there's a Superman reference, and guess which state's Superman's from? Kansas.
Yep.
It all works. So anyway, so point being, this episode, a lot of big things happen because this is the episode where Nate, he's gonna be really interesting for season 2 when you look back on him here, where Ted yells at Nate initially. He apologizes for it, but Nate really showed the promise here, where he gave everyone basically almost like it was kind of like a little bit like a roast, but basically he roasted them by giving them criticism to actually help their performance. And then of course we had the big scene with Roy already talked about. So this is like a big thing for this is when they woke up and they kind of decided like let's make Nate a coach. He actually has a lot of really good ideas. He's been around for a while, and we kind of go from boy, kind of like essentially the tabloid, the equipment manager, and the I guess the proper name being the kit man,
Mm-hmm.
Goes from Kit Man to Coach Man. And yeah, so while all this is happening, where things come about Millhouse for Nate, Ted he suffers his first panic attack because of the divorce plot line this season, which is really big for him as well. Where it's I suspect we are doing a 3-act arc for Ted throughout the series, where we hint at it. We hint at Ted's flaw here, where the personal adversities that he's trying to mask. And we face the problem in we're facing the problem in season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of as we delve into when we peel back the layers, and in season 3 will hopefully be the resolution. Like, what is he going to do after he's gotten to know himself and know what the problem is?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, without getting too into it right this second, it's the fact that he's we see Ted is being divorced in a very human, very interesting way, because his wife has no ill will against him, but she just has fallen out of love with him, and she doesn't have a good reason as to why. Because he's a great dad, he's a loving and supportive of her
there
needs.
there is a reason for it, and that reason gets really gets explored a lot in the second season when you're thinking about it, because like Ted because Ted even mentions himself with that, like, whenever I try to be positive or try to help out, it just made things worse. And clearly, there is sort of, I think the second season especially, there is sort of a point to be made that Ted's sort of always optimistic, sunny outlook, the Pollyanna, of it all, that isn't really healthy. And then there's that term toxic positivity, that's been
Get out of here! Toxic positivity, that's a real thing.
well, it is a term, and I'll explain to you why it's, I think, is applicable for Ted's problem, that he's always has a positive outlook. And thing is, sometimes, for example, the movie Inside Out, sometimes there are moments where you don't experience joy, you experience sadness, and that's okay.
Right.
That's part of the emotional. And for
Basically, it's too much of anything is it's gonna be overkill.
Well, and part of it's that, like, Ted, his thing is just that it's not just that he's always positive, but just it's sort of interesting. Like, for you see kind of a parallel between Ted and Rebecca, not just the sense of divorce, but how they like handle emotional troubles.
Mm-hmm.
They have sort of the Atlas syndrome, where they just bear all that weight. And Ted, displays that guarding, that shielding through his positive outlook, being chipper and all that stuff. And then Rebecca, on the other hand, has like the iron, like girl boss, at kind of demeanor. But ultimately, both these people, just throughout the 2 seasons, and hopefully in the third season, are growing to be okay in letting the guard down and not having to be 100% described to that persona. And for Ted, especially when we get into the second season, I think really is put in a place where he's okay and not being necessarily positive or happy, and that he entertains like notions of melancholy and just contemplation. And I think his relationship with like the therapist, Dr. Sharon Fieldstone, is very instrumental with that. And I think that, like, the first season, it's him. I think what's interesting, the second, like, the first season is about this town being impacted by his positivity, and the second season is about sort of the limits of said positivity. And it'd be very interesting where the third season ends off in regards to like what is ultimately the value and like limitations, once those limits are recognized for Ted's outlook.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea that Ted feels like, as we get into the rationale as to why in season 2. I like that Ted has. It seems to me Ted's. He fears, since what happened to his father, he does not want to quit on anything. As we kind of reaffirm that life philosophy. So, like, Ted feels like he's quit his marriage with the divorce, and that really guts him. And we see that. And again, one of the motivating factors for why he took the job was to give her space. And I think, for me, it feels like Ted's flaw is that he overcorrects with the passion, which again may be the whole toxic positivity thing, where it feels like an overcorrection of the same emotion. And I think basically what we're building to potentially is like, if Ted, the danger of what he's doing is he's suppressing negative emotions, which again could come out in an explosive way. At the very least, right now, possibly are manifesting themselves in panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
possibly. So yeah, I just love that we see Ted like for the first time in that episode where he has this panic attack, and we see him in this helpless, vulnerable way where he is not he can't just smile it off, and he's just helpless in the trembling hands and everything, and Rebecca is there to console him. And again, the fact that these two characters are kind of like, again, they're very much paralleling each other that season. I think is really fitting that they're there, especially knowing that Rebecca is betraying Ted,
Mm-hmm.
and just having her there. Yeah,
It's interesting, like that. It starts like when Rebecca's singing like the Frozen song "Let It Go," because the whole context of that song in that movie is like Elsa's letting go of her fears, her doubts, and just embracing who she is, regardless of how other people perceive it. And for Ted, that's kind of his hang up, is that he can't let go, he can't quit, he can't just, disavow, and that's kind of causing some distress in his body, to where he has to like, go outside the club and just wait until Rebecca comes out to like look, check on him.
yeah.
And it gets worse and worse the less it goes on. The more it goes unchecked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, James, you had thoughts about I think this was like a really impactful scene for you, wasn't it?
Which one?
Well, I thought you were really psyched about the panic attack scene. Did you want to say anything about it?
I don't know. I don't remember saying anything about the panic attack scene.
Yeah, you said it was like a really kind of all like gobsmacking moment for you in the first season.
Well, yeah. I mean, I said it was gut wrenching. Like,
yeah.
And then it just kind of hits, just kind of like actual panic attacks. It kind of just hits you out of nowhere. Like up until that point, we hadn't seen anything like that coming from Ted at all. So
yeah,
the moment we see that, it's just like, oh my god, Ted, what's wrong?
What's interesting is that when you see Ted at his low point, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny as like not like a visual gag, but it almost can be played off of that way. Is that like whenever Ted is kind of down on his luck or down in the dumps, like his hair is not perfectly like brushed. It's just like his hair is kind of a bit of a mess or whatever. And this, like when he goes to panic attack, like his hair is like just only slightly ruffled when Rebecca sees him outside the club. But what I really appreciate for the first season was just sort of the relationship between Ted and Rebecca. They have such a very strong platonic love, and it's especially exemplified in the bar scene. When Ted just decides to become a boss and be Rupert at darts.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love the line in there about the whole like essentially underestimating Ted by not asking questions. The fact that a man without curiosity.
And it's like it's basically trying to give him a lesson, and nobody asking questions like, "You play darts, Ted?"
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great idea. Like, this is why you have like the folksy kind of like the pleasantries where maybe you would ask those questions. It would save you a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but the thing is, like Ted is not like a pushover or anything, and I kind of appreciate it when Ted's at the bar and like Rupert's getting a one or two digs too many into Rebecca. Like Ted just kind of stops him. It's like, Rupert, better manners when I have the darts, and it's just like it really shows that not that Ted has a dark side, but Ted isn't just willing to let like anyone be,
It's like the best characters. He doesn't like. We see that we firmly says Ted Lasso does not like bullies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ted really kind of, is smart enough to really suss out how terrible, Rupert is, and that's kind of one of the few things that gives comfort to Rebecca. Kind of, puts a few chinks in her armor. The fact that like Ted can recognize how bad Rupert is as a person.
Yeah.
And I love like Ted says, for in the gala scene, and we're jumping around a bit, but it's like in the gala scene, it's like, if you could just text him and bring him in, anytime you want. You could have also texted him to not come. And Rupert doesn't like openly deny it. He just like he says wry smile because it's so great just in that sense that like Ted is like a people's person. He's lovable and he loves people, but he's also smart about people. He knows like social dynamics. Is a good judge of character.
Yeah.
And that scene kind of really showed like, okay, Ted isn't just like he's not a walking Care Bear. he's a person that has lived life and knows what's up and up.
Even Ted has his limits.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's like which is especially which is probably one of the best scenes in the series in the first season, especially is when we're talking about practice.
Yeah, he's just letting Jamie have it, but in a nice way. He's yelling at him, but he's kind of still being nice about it. We got practice, and he's hurt his leg.
What's fun fact? I don't know. I guess since you're all not sports people, so what Ted is saying in that dialogue to Jamie, that's an actual speech or quote speech. That's actually something that was said by an actual NBA player, Allen Iverson. So Allen Iverson, like a while back, there was a controversy about him not showing up to a few practices, and he was being interviewed by the press. And the thing, he makes a speech about it's just practice, guys. I put everything out there in the game. Just practice. And it's an infamous speech in both the sense that people supported Iverson, people that and say, hey, just practice, and people that didn't support Iverson. It's like, oh, practice is important. And the context that people don't talk about for that is a sidebar sort of a thing. Is that a friend of his died, and so that's kind of something that people don't talk about. But what's great is that you know how this whole thing starts, right? You know what Jamie sets to set Ted off. He says it's just practice. You know why it's insulting?
Why?
Because in England they call it training. Jamie says it's just practice because he's making fun of Ted for being the dumb American.
Right.
And I didn't realize that until we watched it.
That's even better. I didn't think about that at all. That's great.
Me neither. But yeah, seriously, it's just like that shows that even Ted's had enough of putting up with Jamie's attitude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And what's great is that,
especially when he's like, why don't you go out there and put up some cones?
No. What's great about that scene is as Ted is getting angry, you see the camera doing a Dutch angle.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, it's unusual, but it definitely showed he's really leaning into Jamie.
Well, not only does that, but also it's very rare to see Ted being openly angry and not be intoxicated, or inebriated. It's just him sober.
Or Led Tasso, but we'll get to him.
Yeah.
I love Led Tasso.
Which is kind of emphasizing I feel like the discomfort an audience member has in seeing Ted Lasso, who's this big teddy bear, being openly just angry dad at Jamie. And I think at the end when you see Jamie's face changed, it's sort of for me in rewatching it, and especially going to season 2, it makes me think sort of man, how much of in Jamie going to this conversation did he just thought of his own dad and just how he was been treated? Not to say that Ted was anywhere close to how his dad acts, but just that kind of atmosphere where he's just saying, hey, you need to step up.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, so of course, we end the first season on a spit take. It was a well-deserved spit take, and did bring it all back full circle. Rebecca, she did do him dirt in the first place, but now she's on his side. But we get a reminder, just don't give him the sparkling water.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that brings us to season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Brings us to season 2.
Yes. So this is it's been described by Sudeikis himself as this is very much kind of the Empire Strikes Back season for Ted Lasso. And it depends. Well, again, assuming we have no idea how season 3 is going to go, but at the very least, we a lot of the bad stuff happens, particularly with the big plot twist one of our characters.
Oh yeah.
So this it's very much the therapy and the transformation season. I feel for a lot of characters, people are facing issues this season. They're kind of looking within for the answers, and some of them actually, they're proactive about these answers. Like Roy Kent, for example. Roy Kent goes through quite the arc and transformation. What is he going to do after retirement?
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up in a really good place.
He ends up being the new coach.
Yes,
one of the coaches for, but not before he becomes a sports pundit.
Yeah.
Well, before that is coaching girls football.
Oh yeah, and he's like, "What the doing?"
He's yelling at these little girls, and he's still nice to them though. He's scares it up a storm. I love it.
And the girls still love him though.
I know, I love it. It's wonderful.
I mean, I think it might be like a Disney thing over there over in Britain where it's like more acceptable.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Basically, it's almost either that or it's just played up for comedy.
No, I think it's played up for comedy because like there is the scenes where
I mean in England some swears are seen as less provocative than
we have that one guy throughout the street who keeps Ted. I just thought about Ted Lasso's nickname in the UK.
Wanka.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
what I really like about that one is that like at first it's just like this insult, but by the time he actually like wins a game for them, it kind of becomes like a term of endearment for him.
Yeah.
What do you got, Rohith?
Well, I mean, I think the foul language of Roy is just played out for comedy because because whenever like players curse or do anything that's a little obscene, like the announcers will say, we apologize to the people at home for the fruity or colorful play, and like that's the same thing for like the sports talk show, and like Roy and like the teacher for Phoebe says, hey, you shouldn't be just like cursing up a storm.
Yeah, Mrs. Bowen.
Yes. So I think you just played out. I mean, not to say that Brits aren't less adverse to cursing or quote unquote foul language, but even they have like some some boundaries. But what I appreciate for the second season, well, I'll say this for Roy, I wish he was started as the sports pundit from the jump at season 2, and then got into coaching a little bit earlier on, and we got to see the Roy Kent effect in action. It was kind of weird that it's like the way it's structured. Like he's a girls' football coach. Then he's a sports pundit for a few episodes. Then he's a coach, and like time passes and we don't see him like doing actual coaching that like impacts them, like Richmond winning a few games. We just hear about it.
Yeah. So we should probably talk about the season starting off with a bang. We haven't mentioned Danny Rojas. So Danny Rojas is the delightful what is he? South American? Is he?
He's Mexican player.
Oh, so he's Mexican.
Or at least Central American.
Right. So, points, we have a poor Danny Rojas who is like basically again. I love that we have the gag of like he's very much in tune with Ted Lasso in terms of this guy is very happy-go-lucky, which would irritate the young buck, which would irritate Roy Kent, but more so to irritate Jamie because he's basically more like he's not whining about appearances. This guy lives and breathes the game, man, which gets old after a while.
Football is life.
Football is life.
But in the first episode, he learns a very important lesson.
Football is
death.
I love how Ted Lasso describes Danny Rojas as like a raven-haired golden retriever.
Yeah, which, given what happens, very ironic. Earl the dog, so him killing him. So Danny Rojas, this lovable golden retriever with raven hair, he accidentally kills Earl the dog.
All right, rest in peace, Earl the dog.
Basically, Earl the dog is like the little dog.
It's a greyhound.
Earl Greyhound. Yeah. Which Earl Grey is, of course, a type of tea.
Yeah, that's really cute. Yeah, so I love that's kind of, in a sense, it's kind of the bane of Ted Lasso's existence when you think about it. It's an Earl Grey.
Oh God.
But no, so yeah, I love this. So we have a really good reason to bring in Dr. Sheesh. Again, Ted would not instantly go to her, so we have a way of her being brought to us, a very unconventional way. And I love it's a way that kind of signifies like, hey, our struggling team, they're off to a great start until they kill their mascot.
Like I feel bad for him, and at least nobody like really holds him responsible.
I love that. Everyone's very supportive with
I mean the reporters are kind of jerks by like constantly asking him questions about it, but but nobody really blames him about it.
Ted just charms the reporters by giving like the dog story. It's great.
Which is a nice distraction, of course.
Yeah, so basically he's got the yips. No, the yips, don't say it.
But it does lead to an interesting development amongst the group with a new addition to the staff.
Yeah, I love for when Doctor Fieldstone comes in that like there's just a change in the vibe or a change in the atmosphere.
Yeah, someone's kind of bumping back over the positivity of Ted Lasso. But and again, it's interesting that we kind of play her potentially as as like kind of an antagonist of sorts, but obviously does not go that way. And I think it was a good
Like,
call.
even Trent Krim, the Independent, got in on all this.
Yeah,
we always have to say the Independent after his
we
name.
do.
Even the other reporters were like Trent Krim, the Independent,
Of course, now it's Trent Krim Independent, but yeah,
which is a nice ring.
yeah. So so deep down, I like that we set this up really nicely. Deep down, Ted does not trust therapists because he blames them for his divorce, but more so because he believes they're paid to care versus actually care. And then she has a really good retort to this. The whole like, well, do you coach for free?
And he's like, I would coach for free, but do you?
Yeah,
No.
exactly. So basically, she deflects Ted's positivity until she has no choice but to really live with it for a while, and it does kind of touch her a little bit there. Again, disarms her ultimately.
I mean, in a way, she even says that his kind of way of looking at things even improved her from being a therapist.
Listen, we established she does have a bit of an ego, and I think all therapists to a degree. I don't know if it's like other therapists are really good at their jobs, just the therapists who maybe kind of exude like the stereotype of therapists know better than you, and they're gonna kind of do something like that. It's not the case with every therapist, obviously.
I mean, it's reasonable why Ted would assume so, considering his prior experience.
Yeah, but it's also the question of I think we kind of look into potentially the stereotype of the English sometimes, where there is kind of like there's somewhat.
I mean, she even admits so in her when she says goodbye. It's like you made me a better therapist, which is impressive because I was fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Pardon my French, but that language is in the show itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, Roy Kent, we have a swear that's a mile high.
What I appreciate and what's really
what I love about Roy Kent is where it's like he has like a swear jar, and like his niece is like probably collected thousands of dollars.
Well, that's the thing. She has a swear tab, man. That's can't fit it into a jar,
and it's like over 1,000 pounds.
That's insane. Anyway, yeah.
Probably use eventually by the time she's 18, she could probably use that money to just pay her way through uni.
And I love that you get the sense Roy Kenny's absolutely going to follow through on that. Like he was offering her $1,000 if Christmas was ruined. So I love that.
What I appreciate about Dr. Fieldstone, to go back with her for a sense.
Yeah.
So and this is something that I've never seen in any other like film or TV depiction of a therapist, is like her having a conversation with her own therapist.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like weird because it makes sense that even for the average everyday therapist, they would probably need their own therapist. Which
I've only seen that done twice with therapists in TV shows, Sopranos and BoJack Horseman.
Yeah. And then it also helps to really like humanize Sharon and like kind of make what was really interesting was the when Ted comes in her place like 3 or 4 bottles of wine, and she's not like at all an alcoholic, but like there is some subtext where it's like, okay, Sharon, as like a modern day woman, that's career focused or whatever, one of the things to kind of, deal with or just relieve the stress is just her, having like a bottle or two, maybe not a bottle, but like over the course of a few weeks, a few bottles of wine. And it was something that I appreciate, like when Ted goes around, like Sharon instinctively just takes like the empty bottles, puts them to a side as if she's ashamed of just kind of the state of her apartment.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But yeah, I like that. She kind of like the walls come down, and obviously we need to. It needs to make sense for Ted to be able to kind of share things with. And there's a real thing in therapy where you have to build trust. Or like nowadays, if I don't understand it, like with therapy, they have like, especially you do like an online thing. But I think in general though, you go through somebody who's going to help you find a therapist, and when you do that, they basically they try to make sure they match you. Like, ask, okay, well, would you like like a male therapist, female therapist, like older, younger, like essentially, so you can basically someone you can ideally instantly trust or connect with, or at least would feel comfortable sharing things with.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense it would take time for the bond to take shape there. I love the gag where she like, just for mystique purposes, like she's like in the stable and she keeps moving one row forward just to mess with Ted.
It's like she's definitely moving forward. I can tell.
Love it.
It's like, and to be fair, she didn't really make the great first impression with Ted.
No, she didn't. No.
But like every other character, she grows on you.
Yeah.
What
else?
And I just really like even throughout the entire thing, and like she's trying to get him to open up, but he really doesn't until he like suffers another panic attack. He's like, I'd like to make an appointment.
Yeah.
And even then, it's still hard for him to come to her after that too.
No, for sure. So we should talk about, because we didn't get a chance to really dig into him in the first season, but Sam Avasanya.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he didn't really do much in the first season.
That's what I'm saying. We set him up in the first season. This is a season where he really comes in the focus, and we should talk about him. So Sam here, big payoff season for him. A Nigerian player here, where he was Jamie's biggest detractor, and really worried he was going to rejoin the team, which he does. Mm-hmm. Big thing for Sam this season. He stands up to the Nigeria. If I understand right, he stands up to the Nigerian government and the team sponsor with Dubai Air.
He doesn't stand up to the Nigerian government. He stands up to Dubai Air, which is owned by a parent company, Lithium Oil, that like has been polluting like the coastline of Nigeria, and the Nigerian government has been like turning a blind eye or not holding them accountable.
But to be fair, that is also calling out against the Nigerian government.
True, yeah.
I mean, technically, they're still it's still ultimately leading to them. But you're right. The point is mainly Dubai Air, but there's kind of a connective thing. He's not saying Nigeria sucks or anything.
I mean, it is mainly directed at Dubai Air, but
yeah.
But he's even asked the question. He even is asked the question by one of the reporters. It might even be Troy Craig, like the Independent. And everything. He's even asked, like, Trent Crim, the Independent. He's even asked, like, are you accusing the Nigerian government of corruption?
He says yes.
So he even does call them out. So it's not. Yeah.
One thing else, the whole thing I have an issue with that particular plot line is that there's really no long-term consequences of, like, because think of it, like, what we gotta acknowledge sort of the basis of the inspiration for this particular plot line, with Colin Kaepernick and the kneeling and all that stuff. There was significant consequences for Colin Kaepernick, for athletes that protested in terms of losing medals, in terms of being excluded from the sport, and the fact that like Sam launched the logo, their biggest sponsor, and Rebecca was like, oh, F off or whatever. And then they just got like the dating app as like the new front logo, and there was like no consequences in terms of money. Here's the thing that the way that plot line was structured, the way it went out, especially with like the random call from like Sam's dad about, like Suritimo is not allowed near Nigeria or something like that. It felt to me that the second season compared to the first season lost, not as the like edge is the right word, but lost the sense of where the real world, feel. Whereas the first season, it's like Ted is a very optimistic person, but him and the team have to contend with the real world and things not going their way and whatnot. But in the second season, it just feels like the optimism just kind of is maybe not less earned, but less appreciated when things are going well for them for the most part. Right?
I mean, well, I don't think you're wrong about that. I think it's more so just kind of a thing of the season where we're having people face their problems, and I think so far the solutions are coming up Millhouse for them. However, I don't know. There is consequence with Sam's decisions, though, because he then we do a big subversion with Sam's thing in a really interesting way. That is kind of like it's like a delayed consequence of what he did. So ultimately, it does. Like the Edwin Kufo, the Sam Richardson character, the billionaire Nigerian guy who tries to buy Sam.
it's like, and Sam turns him
Yeah.
down. Sam turns him. It's like he's like basically the entire episode. Like Edwin is like making himself like this benevolent, this benevolent kind of like, oh, I don't want to be a billionaire, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then when Sam turns it down, like, I will burn down this place.
I will buy your childhood home and turn to a place of pooping.
Basically,
Well,
basically,
no, so Edwin Kupo is Ghanan, which is where he like because once he gets into his tirade, he's like, "You Nigerian, blah 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 blah." And
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
yes. I thought it was Kenyan, but I checked. It's Ghanan.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but the thing is that like for me, going back to that plot line, considering like the real world inspiration, how like divided people were, especially probably teammates, I feel like I kind of wish that plot line, was developed a bit more, and there was like there was not an immediate agreement among team members, and maybe that could have been something that like Ted has to like navigate, and it's not something he could just like do a pep talk over like that. And I feel like that's where I think the second season kind of, for me, is less than the first season, because first season it's about Ted like winning over the team, and I feel like the second season does a good job. It's like, all right, he's one of their team, but there's still things that like even Ted's optimism can't solve or like put a band-aid over. And so Ted has to kind of, mature and be a little bit more, realistic or more nuanced in the way he approaches problems. And didn't feel like Ted was given the opportunity to do so, or the show didn't give opportunities for the team to really go through, hard times.
Well, I mean, one of them killed a dog right in the opening. That's pretty.
I mean, I
It's-
think back to like the first season with the fact that like they lost. Like what I think it feels weird to me watching the second season is kind of how less like how more insular it is. Like you don't really get the sense of like the world, environment around Richmond, like how the media is responding. Like it feels to me the second season is kind of more focused on like the interpersonal relationships among the team, and you lose the sense of like the media environment, the fans' opinions, informing the atmosphere, and with things going so well, and it's like okay, like I'm not against like the optimism of the show, but what made the optimism really worthwhile, really something to value, is that like it was something that they held on to even in the most dire times. And I feel like for the second season, then optimism I think kind of veered not to schmaltzy or saccharine, but it felt that they were just not, it felt like the second season wasn't giving the characters their due in terms of, hey, let's have them go through the struggles and still retain their optimism and grow as people. It's like, oh, like things are just going well, and there's just like, there's some drama in bit parts, but not like an overall. Like the thing that was really crazy for me that like it's just mentioned once is never followed up on is the fact that like they're a championship league, but the athletes are paid premier, salaries, and it's like, why isn't that addressed more in terms of like the fact that there's not enough money to, or at least money is being paid way more than like what these athletes are worth in light of their position. And that's like there's just certain like little things that's like, man, this should have been
Basically,
more.
there's not enough consequence for them losing as often as they
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I think. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, honestly, I think ultimately the reason we don't delve deeper into some of the stuff like the Sam stuff, or maybe have as many setbacks as we do, is, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is just literally like not writing themselves into a corner, but I think it's more so like, well, we got to keep the focus on certain things in the season, and we only have so many episodes, and we're a half-hour show.
Yeah.
I wonder.
And the thing is, they went from 10 to 12 episodes, and I think had they just I love the Beard episode, I love the Christmas episode, but I feel like those episodes have been taken out and switched out.
Those two feel like the sounds of things like they liked so much. From what Jacob told me, it sounds like they added 2 episodes, and those two are definitely.
Like the original order was for 10 episodes in the second season, and they wrote all the storyline and scripts for the 10 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that point, they basically added two more episodes to the order, bringing it to 12.
And Smart Money's, those are the 2 episodes.
Yeah, but then they tried to find places to insert them.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they inserted the Christmas episode, and then they did the Beard's
Beard's Wild Ride.
Basically,
which is based
Mr.
on
Mr. Beard's Wild Ride, essentially. But yes, it's based on the film After Hours. As I unfortunately, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Rohit.
Yeah.
But it's like, and they basically decided to insert that after he just walks off.
Mhm.
So, sorry.
The one thing I do like, one of the few things I do really like though, and there's a small thing that I really like. The big thing I really like. Small thing I really liked was like Roy and Keely's relationship. It's like, all right, they're together, but there's still drama, and it's not drama where they break up, but it's like very relatable and very real, like relationship drama. Like the fact that there's like a whole thing about them like spending so much time together, and like Roy, learning to give space is such a great, great arc, greater point in the relationship because oftentimes for like relationship drama in like movies and TV, it's often like they're not spending much time together or they're spending time with other people, which leads to jealousy and all that. That wasn't there. This is stuff that very, average everyday couples experience from time to time. And it's rarely displayed in media. So it's actually pretty cool for stuff like that to be there. And as well as, I really appreciate kind of Keely kind of becoming more part of the team and being involved with the marketing, and that was pretty cool. Oh, one thing I don't like, and so there's 2 big things that I'll love, but I'd be interested in your guys' opinion on. Your thoughts on the Sam and Rebecca relationship. My thoughts overall is that I liked it watching week to week, and then the more I thought about it and rewatching it, I feel like it was a mistake of the writers to have them be in a relationship. Not really just the light of the age issue, but just also the fact that like
On it? Go on.
it's an HR nightmare.
Honestly, the age issue really isn't an issue in the first place to me because they're both consenting adults, so it's not really that big of a deal to me.
I didn't think it was an issue. And for me, it's more of the fact that like Rebecca's clearly like Sam's employer, and 2, it is sort of interesting. I don't know, maybe. Well, I don't know if it's a hypocritical of the writers to have paired those 2 up because I think back to like the first season, like it like Rupert's kind of portrayed in a negative light for going after clearly young women, and the whole stereotype of like rich old white guy goes after like young models, and then for this it's like Rebecca, who was kind of aggrieved or been negatively impacted by such a thinking, is dating this like young athlete, young famous athlete. Even though like Sam as a person is like not the typical stereotype of like the hotshot celebrity.
Yeah, he's not Jamie.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
But I still think that like the fact that it's an employer employee, getting a relationship and considering the HR, like that should have. I feel like either there should have been consequences to the relationship, or they shouldn't have gone to a relationship.
oh, we haven't gotten to the consequences yet, right? So we can't really say there aren't any consequences.
Well, I mean, like they end the relationship near the end, and it's not like the relationship gets reported on or leaked. And I can't assume that it's going to be ever addressed in the 3rd season.
I don't know. I think. Well, I guess we'll see. But it feels like they're gonna cover that. Like anyway. Regardless.
I mean, in all honesty, I'm not sure how to feel about the whole relationship myself. I'm just saying that the whole age thing, it really shouldn't be.
The age thing like isn't as big of an issue as it is just like in the real world. It would be inappropriate, and Rebecca would be opening AFC Richmond up for potential like lawsuits if say Sam is prioritized over another player, or Sam is let go for Richmond, and that's like the whole legal like if you really think about it, it would be considering how like for the most part logical and like pragmatic Rebecca is in this thing. Like it's not something where it's like, oh, Rebecca's dating someone who may not be in the same like strata or life station, but she's dating someone that's like under her employment. She's her
Yeah.
like she's Sam's boss.
Yeah.
She pays the salary and all that stuff. And it's like I think this kind of like plot line wouldn't have been much an issue like 10 or 20 or even 25 years ago when, workplace relationships.
I mean, look at the nanny.
Yeah.
I know it was a will they, won't they, but she still worked for him. So
Yeah. And the like, uh, and that sort of thing was just like, and the thing is, Rebecca even mentions it's like, oh, I'm your boss, and just drops it, and just never is like, well, really, if this was reported, if people knew about it, what's weird to me is that like nobody responded negatively to the idea that Rebecca was dating Sam, and then everyone like all the girls were in support of it, and it's like it's weird that none of the guys ever know, and I wonder if the guys didn't know, would they have as much of a positive reaction as like Rebecca's female
well,
friend?
the guys are really supportive, so I think like, good on you, Sam. Like, I don't think they
Do
judge.
guys even know that Sam's relationship with Rebecca? I don't think so.
No, they don't know. All they know is they got him ready for a date, for the big date when he showed up, because the whole Isaac and the haircutting thing. But they don't know who he's seeing or how it went specifically. Here's the thing. It's funny that, to the hypocrisy point, I don't think it's necessarily one for one there, because that was literally him going after one
Well, the
probably
thing is,
adult.
well, specifically, the thing with Rupert was while they were married in the first place.
Yeah, but one, it's while they were married in the first place, and two, it's the fact that it's like literally another girl named Rebecca, so he's literally replacing her, and knowing in the media it'll be like the young, like he found another girl named Rebecca. Come on,
And
that's
I mean, it also doesn't help the fact that like he also conveniently gets her pregnant, and and sort of is making some really sexist digs at Rebecca, her being like passed over and kind of reflective of society's attitudes towards aging women. No, again, I don't really have the issue with the aging. It's more the HR like.
well, to the HR point though.
Mhm.
Here's the thing. I mean, again, I'd be shocked. I don't think this is 25 years ago. Well, let's just say, for the point being, even back then, something like, I'm going to give you an example. The Office. Okay, in The Office, Michael Scott dated his boss, or at least not the boss, but like someone who had higher authority on him. Yeah, Jan. And they went through the HR. They signed the form and everything, and it was okay. So I mean, look, it'd be a messy process, and we're not really portraying the messiness of that process, because I don't recall it really getting out, but I think I might have missed that if it did. It's the fact that it's not unheard of. It's not that there isn't like protocols for this sort of thing. I mean, if they consent, it's just going to be they have to file the paperwork and stuff. And I mean, I guess going all the way up to the chain of the boss, I mean, it's a way to go, but I don't think it's necessarily like not realistic. Or like, I mean, it's an HR. Yes, you're right. It's an HR nightmare, but it doesn't mean it's not something that would happen.
I guess I mean I feel like it's different for like if it was like an immediate like if say like a player was dating like an assistant coach or like a staff member, that'd be one thing. But like a player to be dating like the owner of the team, that's like a whole it's not even just like the HR thing, but also it's like if the relationship was known. Like, think of how much media scrutiny both like Sam and
Well,
Rebecca.
sure. I mean, that's the thing I think season 3 might dig into potentially, but assuming.
But here's the thing. In retrospect, the seeds were kind of planted in the first season because there was definitely like some brief, flash interactions where there was some level of chemistry or just some awkward, not awkward, but like some playful like conversations between Sam and Rebecca. I think the writers may have like extrapolated that to like make a full term relationship. I will say that Sam, for being as young as he is, he's 21 years old.
Yeah.
He's very mature and very
absolutely, yeah.
Supportive of Rebecca. I do like the one scene where at like the funeral, like Sam is like, "Oh, I wanted to do this all day," and it's like giving her a hug, and it's like
drags her into the closet in private to give her the hug. Yeah. It's funny. I wonder, you watching week to week, did you catch the misdirect to they kind of threw a misdirect, I thought, for like one episode where they set up the dating app thing and she's
Where's
texting her
the Ted?
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was to Ted.
Which becomes the sponsor after Dubai Air.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Man.
the idea that might have been Ted might have been secretly courting her after he's now divorced his wife potentially, but they did not do that.
Yeah, and it's not just the misdirect of like the video like the shot transition where like Ted's having his phone.
Mhm.
But it's also when you think about if you just hear what's being read, like what Rebecca reads of like the person near their end, it's like, oh, there's like this quote. It's like, oh, are like the dragons or inner dragons hiding their treasures. Like that's like a line that you can imagine Ted saying.
Yeah, because he's well read. Yes.
Yeah. And like the goof about like, well, I wouldn't be as good of a spy. It's like, oops. And it's like, yeah, that's definitely like a joke that Ted would make. So, which it's kind of funny in the way that like
now we're seeing Ted's rubbing off on the players. That's ultimately
in part. Well, it's not just rubbing off. Like Sam is kind of like a Ted in his own right. He's making like he's very, cheerful and optimistic. And he has like pop culture references with stuff like Harry Potter, Ratatouille being his favorite movie. Actually, now that I think about it, I can imagine Ratatouille being Ted's favorite movie. When he like, you don't know like Sam is the one. All the things that are said about the mystery guy does sound like things Ted would say.
I love the Ratatouille conversation amongst Rebecca.
It's like Rebecca kind of dismisses it at first, but then
Keely defending Ratatouille was awesome. I loved it.
It's like and Ratatouille is a fucking masterpiece.
Yes,
it's Keely. And how good art can come from anywhere, and when you think about it, I think Ted could really, in light of like the whole monologue and the Dar monologue scene, like Ted would really appreciate that kind of message about it's not about sort of the station of life, it's about what it's in you. And
it fits into what his whole deal is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and fun fact, there's been 2 Brad Bird films that have been referenced in these 2 seasons.
That's true. That now we got to go for Incredibles next.
No, it'll be Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol, or in the worst case of scenarios, Tomorrowland.
Come on, let's not say worse with an emphasis. Let's just.
I'm being facetious. I've never seen Tomorrowland, so I can't really.
I like Tomorrowland. I know the third act's a little choppy, but I like Tomorrowland. Anyway, so Jamie Tart. So we have the Jamie Tart redemption, which I like. That he hit rock bottom with his reality show, but people saw like how much of a kind of somewhat of a scumbag that he is, kind of like on the reality show setting. So he's cruising the toilet, and Ted essentially brings him back, and he makes a good faith effort to change, and then kind of Roy helps him out with it. We see Roy being a really good coach, and he tells him he needs to be a prick on the field.
What I really appreciate though when Jamie approaches him, Ted says like, I don't think it's a good idea, and like when the fact that there's a photo taken of him and like the team is responding negatively to like the idea of like Jamie being back, and then later on Jamie comes back and eventually like Ted has to just sort of be the bad guy to sort of for Jamie to
Yeah, the lead tasso. Yeah, so we get lead tasso, which is Jacob. How did you feel about lead tasso?
Oh, I loved lead tasso.
We all love lead tasso.
Lead tasso was amazing. It's just like that's not basically people basically point out like that's how he was in the original adverts.
Pretty much, your feet fingers.
Oh God! Like I don't know what to say about lead tasso other than we hope we see more of him.
I love the part about him. It's like, you want to marry? You want to date this ball? You want to marry it?
Love the relationship status of the ball. It's just great.
I appreciate it, like when Lead Tasso is about to leave, and then like Beard stops him and like snaps his fingers, and Ted
he's like in a trance.
Yeah. And then Ted's like, "How long was I on?" It's like,
Beard's it's okay.
Like, it's over now.
I just love how like even Beard was just like kind of clapped his hands and was like Ted was like, "How long was I out?"
Also, I appreciated Jamie making a literary reference of all things, and in that Lead Tasso when he brought out the Jekyll and Hyde, is like, man, Jamie, That's probably the only like smart reference you ever made throughout the 2 seasons.
Yeah.
We haven't talked enough about Beard, honestly.
Well, Beard has a whole episode, Jacob. So Beard, we see the shenanigans he gets into. Also with the we haven't mentioned these guys at all. With the bar patrons, the pub patrons. Baz, Jeremy, and Paul. The three fans, but the derisive fans. But still, I forget which. I don't know who's who. I don't forget if Jeremy's the friendly one of the bunch who keeps like I don't know. He's very personable. He's the one who gets hit by the dart by the kid by accident. Anyway. But the point being, these three guys, they get into some shenanigans with Beard, and we should talk about Beard's love life with Jane. How do you guys feel about Jane?
Toxic.
Yeah, it's just crazy, right? I just love the fact he's got like this. I love the fact we show Beard being the strategist that he is. He loves playing chess, and this girl catches his interest, but very, very destructively, it seems.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Beard being such a big chess guy, to the point where he has like a chess coffee table, it makes you think of like he is very much. I kind of wonder. Maybe this is probably too far of a point, but
Also, he played chess just by naming the places. Like he's that good a player. Like one of those guys.
I mean, he's playing chess without a board with Jane
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
No, but it's interesting that like it's sort of maybe not the stereotype, but like Beard is very strategic and quick on his feet, especially with like him being able to pick up that cover story in the Beard After Hours, with him being like a long 10-year professor. But I think with the way he thinks and the way he feels is that he's very precise, he's very deliberate in his chess moves. But in terms of his like feelings and just like his relationships with people, at least with women, it's the complete opposite.
I think that's accurate. I don't think that's too far a stretch, right? I think that's kind of accurate.
Yeah, and that is kind of the perfect compliment to Ted, where maybe he's not
they balance each other out.
Yeah, he's probably not the most strategic of thinkers, but Ted makes up for it with his like heart and just like personability, which is whereas Beard, he just like gives a hard stare even to children.
Yeah. And we gave him funky pants. Yeah, so I love that we had basically like his savior was Roy Kent on steroids. Essentially, he said this one giant guy looks like Roy Kent was on steroids. This guy saved him, and the fact he's having the baby, the girl gave him the pants and everything. And by the way, here's a question. Here's a missed opportunity question for you. Do you think we should have seen Ted punch Jamie's father?
No, because the fact that Jamie punched his own father and the fact that Jamie broke down afterwards was a strong emotional moment, because
you got Roy Kent to hug him. That was a big moment.
Yeah, and also Jamie, has remember that like in the first season, the ghost episode.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he threw away his cleats that his mom gave him, and he got in soccer to make her proud. And then when she went away, his dad gave him the picture, and his dad just been has such a hold on his psyche, and him punching his dad and just basically his dad just leaves him behind. And Jamie breaking down. That's, I think, a pivotal moment, because now Jamie has, exercised the toxic influence his father's had, and now he's in a better place, a better position to be a better person.
Yeah, he's in remission.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so that scene also jump started, in a big way. Ted kind of opened up about his father, so we should talk about so Ted's father. We learned in the funeral episode was really well. We learned, we kind of parallel. Rebecca learned that saw that her father was a cheater, which probably is why she was even more really hurt by what happened in her own marriage. And we kind of intercut that with Ted in a therapy session on the day of the funeral, talking about how his father committed suicide and how he found him, and it was again reaffirmed he doesn't quit philosophy, because his father quit on life, essentially quit on family and life, and that's the way he perceived it.
Yeah, I love the intercutting between Ted and Rebecca when they're talking about like finding their fathers and the work and like their respective work states with
Mhm.
Ted's father committing suicide and Rebecca's father having an affair. Um, it kind of like it kind of makes you think about because there's a one line in season 1 where Ted's like, "Oh, let me tell you the story about how I came to my prom pajamas and actually ended up in jail." And it's like, considering he lost his dad when he was 16, assuming he went to prom in his junior or senior year, like probably him going to pajamas wasn't like a funny haha joke, and maybe it was been something more, because for people who go through periods of depression or just low or or things of that nature, they often don't take care of like their personal hygiene or their like look.
It manifests itself in some way usually.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Jason Sudeikis actually won an Emmy for that episode.
Oh, even better.
I believe I remember if I remember correctly, that's like the episode where it's talking about like the no weddings at a funeral. I think.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the episode.
The Rick Astley man. I mean that deserved an Emmy to make like Rick rolled into like a poignant moment. My God.
But like Jason Sudeikis like won I believe he won an Emmy for that episode.
He did. Well, it sounds like he did. Yeah.
And he deserved it too.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. I think Ted's got an underlying fear of of essentially that if he he feels like potentially with the divorce he's abandoned or going to be kind of the separation of it all. He's separating for family, and it'll be the same fate as if he had shared the same fate of his father. I think deep down that's the fear. That's why, like, particularly the divorce has been hitting him hard. Maybe why the panic attacks. And I think getting deeper into the root cause of this, like with all Jamie's fatherly stuff, is really making him think back to.
Oh, I mean, think about the fact that like he mentions like at like several instances throughout the first 2 seasons about it. I was like, hey, I had to go FaceTime with Henry, just and so like you kind of wonder if it's like I would love with the 3rd season like he doesn't like FaceTime with Henry or Henry can't FaceTime with him, and maybe that's cause of another panic attack.
Yeah,
I can definitely see Ted be the kind of person that's like has like a very like attached, like those like childhood, it's like, oh, this person grew up very attached to their parents, and this person grew up very anxious or whatnot, and so that's something that would be a good area to explore in the 3rd season. But I really, when you think of sort of an overall 2 seasons, like what Ted does and how he does things, the 1st season is very colored with what we know about his dad and just how he came upon.
It's a great retroactive watch for sure. So the Christmas, like, real quick, and we'll talk about the big thing. That'll be pretty much it. So the Christmas episode, again, this was a lot of fun. Again, as Jacob mentioned earlier, I love Higgins with all the homesick players, kind of offering his home to them. We see Ted and Rebecca playing Santa Claus, which is adorable. There are white people at the door and they're smiling.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the Christmas episode, to sort of link it back just a bit to the whole dad, his dad suicide thing. It's like, what movie is Ted watching for Christmas?
It's a Wonderful Life during the suicide scene.
Yeah.
It's a good foreshadow.
Yeah.
Oh boy,
it's good.
But it is ultimately about something that gets better. And
let's talk. I'm sorry, go on.
I mean, ultimately, as we all know, it's a Wonderful Life. After that moment, he has shown the value of his own life. So,
and we've used the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special song before there was a Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
Yeah, but the thing is, in light of that, you wonder if Ted just wished like there was someone like something like that for his dad.
Yeah, but there's at least someone like that for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we should talk about the best part of the Christmas special, which is Roy Kent's search for a dentist.
It's like it all stemmed from his niece having bad breath.
That again, I just love the way that scene plays out, where she breathes and Keeley just can't. He's thinking, "Oh, she feels bad enough," and he smells. He's been in all the worst locker rooms. It's like you're dying.
It's like he's like, it can't be that bad. Like, well, first off, Keely's like, it can't be that bad. Sniffs it, like, oh,
just wonderful.
And then when he smells it, he's like, you can tell he's just like trying to hide it, but he's like, I think you're dying.
I just loved how out of his way he went to save Christmas, and I thought that was just one. And then we do like the Love Actually thing with the cards at the end. It's great.
And it's and that's like where the wager came. It was like, if we're gonna go to the posh neighborhood, and if I don't find a dentist within 10 houses,
you're both getting £1,000.
Also, Hanny of Waddingham has like a fucking great voice. Lin-Manuel Miranda needs to pick her up, or someone to do a musical for her. Like, my God.
But yep, and then they actually do find a dentist, and I didn't know the whole card thing was a reference to Love Actually, because I've never watched Love Actually.
Yeah,
but
it is.
But nice, but it was heartwarming. It was still nice and heartwarming, though.
Yeah. All right, so
I'm sorry, Phoebe. Which is just like, oh
yeah.
I love Roy's grunting, and then he was like, "I'm sorry, I'm not part of this."
All right, so we got to talk about the big thing everyone wants to know and talk about with season 2. We got to talk about Nate. Okay, we can't leave this thing without talking about the Nate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Nate betrays Ted very brutally.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the seeds of this very masterfully throughout the season. So we get last season, we ended with a big boost for Nate. He got promoted to coach. It was a nice, happy affair, and we kind of see a little bit of again, Ted being the other father figure potentially, where more friendship ultimately. But we just given the fact that we see Nate's father, there's kind of like he's very supportive compared to where his father is. This might be a bit of a father figure nod in there as well. So the point being, he's attached himself to Ted, looked at him as a great mentor, and that's nice. And we very interestingly, we see Nate, the coach position is kind of gone to his head a little bit, and I think there's a little bit of perpetuating I don't know if perpetuating the cycle of abuse is the right term, but essentially, like, we have the new Kit man, and he's Will, and he's mistreating this poor lad even before the big turning point of the season happens.
Well, you know what Nate, you know who Nate really is, to make a comparison. Nate is Peter Parker without an Uncle Ben and Ant-Man.
Huh. It's a good. I didn't think of it that way. That's
because when you read Amazing Fantasy issue 15, Peter is very like vindictive, like conceited. Not conceited is the right word. He's very vindictive.
Wait, don't you mean number 15?
15. Yeah.
Didn't he say 15?
Yeah,
he said 13.
Sorry. Amazing Fantasy 15. Peter is like a put upon nerd that thinks he's above like his classmates. That's like in one specific line, it's like, man, I just want to help my uncle and aunt, and to the rest of the world, they can go hang or whatever. Like, F them. And then like when he gets the powers, he wants to make money, and he's all about just the status and power of it all. And so Nate, really, when you look at the first season in retrospect, from when I was rewatching, there's certain things that Nate does and says is like, oh, this is reflective of something troubled in Nate. Because think of what Nate says to when Rebecca's approaching him to give him like, oh, you've been promoted, like Nate,
calls her a shrew and everything.
Yeah. And Nate's like whole big moment of like really being able to shine among the team is him doing like verbal put downs, which, and watching it through the first time go, I was like, oh, Nate's like, he's taking the piss or whatnot. But when you think back to, how he turns out the second season, Nate kind of really feels in retrospect, there is sort of this underlying notion that Nate feels empowered or feels strength when he puts down others verbally.
And I think that's because, as we see we see it a couple points, but the big instance in which we see it is his parents' anniversary. We see his father does that to him. His father gave him the inferiority complex, which I think makes him feel like that's why he gets put down so much and kind of bullied, and that's why the only satisfaction he can get is like kind of being the father, essentially being like, I'm gonna put other people down.
And it's even highlighted through like his interactions with Colin.
Yeah,
the guy who made fun of him the most early on.
Oh right, yes, you're right. Sorry, yeah.
And but Colin was like legitimately trying to like be nice to him this time.
And Beard, I love how Beard really took him to the woodshed over that. Beard said, "Hey, what you did with Colin, that's not cool."
It was personal and weird.
I know. I love how direct he was. That's it, because Beard again emotionally is again being all business, so we can really direct it to him though.
And then what's funny about that is like when Nate tried to return back, Beard was gone.
I love it.
Like basically making like, was that just in my head?
He's a wizard. I love it.
Like Mr. Beard Coach Beard is an enigma.
Yeah. Also, what the thing that really stands out in retrospect and watching Nate's arc in season 1 and knowing where things end up season 2, Nate has like there are just certain things. I'm trying to think what's the one thing that stood out in season 1 that like in retrospect is
little box.
No, it's not the box, but it's also kind of the like. I'm trying to think if there's one. Oh, there's one line that he says in the first season that like has a bit of irony to it. It's like his biggest fear in season 1 is that of growing old, and at the end of season 2,
oh, the white hair, yes, okay.
And the white hair it plays two ways because one, it's like it's him turning to his dad because his dad has white hair.
Mm-hmm.
But in real life, there's a football coach named Jose Mourinho who is basically has kind of the same person that like same sort of trajectory where he was like the wonder kid, like football coach, and he specifically has like white hair, and so that was sort of that's something for people who are in the know football made that connection between the two.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, I had a different visual take on Nate's development because I feel like you go back to kind of the days of season 1 again, like he was making little boxes and everything, kind of the Ted Lasso era of Nate, very much, kind of like we're like the Spike and Ike sort of thing. We're pals, aren't we? Kind of being taken under his wing. To when we get to honestly from the I guess the last episode onward, but we do those jumps in times. I don't want to say definitively, but let's just say that for example, he's wearing like an all black suit like Roy does. So he's kind of like, and again, he had a really nice scene with Roy, and but Roy is the big tipping point of the season with the Nate thing. I think it's a real huge flag that gets planted in the right, practically. I forget if it's literally right in the middle of season 6 or not, but it's pretty near the middle, where one, he earned a lot of respect from Roy in the first season when he called him out. He inspired Roy. That was big. And also, again, we have that arc of like, Roy was kind of protecting Nate. So again, there is a respect and a bit of a friendship there. So there is kind of another inspirational figure, which maybe influenced like the fashion sense and kind of the attitude stuff later. But the big turning point this season is Nate already had like something a little bit wrong, a little bit off, a little bit of like the whole power struggle thing, like basically putting out others to make himself feel important. But when Roy came back as a coach, when he walks on that field, standing right next to him, you see, and Nate is kind of like he's over talking. And these are like the seeds I'm talking about through the season, where like you see the things that he's perceiving as slights. And to be fair, I mean, Ted is directing a lot of the pride and praise to somebody who needs it right now with Roy, who's making the adjustment. And it's almost like, it's like the jealous middle child syndrome or something, where Nate's feeling kind of slighted by this, and that he's been abandoned by his mentor and his savior and everything. So that's what's turned, all the betrayal and everything up. So Roy is very key in that. So it's very interesting that he kind of becomes a perversion of what Roy Kent is.
No, well, really, if anything, what Nate becomes is kind of like a perverted version of Jamie from season 1.
Huh. I didn't think of it.
Yeah, because when you think about it, it's like the whole dynamic between Jamie and Roy was like the old seasoned veteran Gumpy, who's grumpy and has seen it all, who butts heads with like the young buck that's Jamie, who's like really talented. And then and when you go into season 2, the whole thing for Nate, he's trying to, you meant to say wonder kid, but he's the wonder kid. He's like the boy genius.
Yeah.
Now, like the old seasoned veteran that has so much love and endearment is now kind of stealing his thunder. And now he kind of has that kind of, at least the way I read it for me is that I can kind of understand where Nate was feeling is like, I'm this like young guy that through my talents, through what I have, I got to be, I got to make the decisions and make the plays that worked well. And this guy, like, not to say that Roy's a bad coach or anything, but Roy, being Roy Kent, kind of steals his thunder, and
Yeah.
and like and him being an old season, like he's less wonder and more a kid, and I think that's part of like Nate's insecurity. Like he just feels like not a man,
And everyone, the whole suit thing, the whole season, everyone's saying, Ted's buying your suits and your mom's buying your suits and all that sort of thing. It's not helping the whole, like, again, yeah.
He's like, once Ted bought the suit, it transferred ownership to me.
One, that's really funny, but still, it does lead to his point there. And again, it's the whole like kind of boy to man arc on Nate, where again, as you said, goes full gray like his father and everything. So he's definitely he's going very independent, very man and stuff.
Well, considering that Nate out of the four coaches, Nate is the one. So Jose Mourinho, the real life football coach, a lot of the football coaches wear suits, formal, but like Jose Mourinho is the one who's like dressed a little more stylish. And Nate, out of the four coaches, is the only one that dresses formal. And that is indicative of an individual who wants to be seen as grown up and mature.
Now that also brings me to another point, though, with the suit. The suit was obviously another kind of like it was a big upgrade for him when he bought his own suit, and he with Keeley, we suit shop with Keeley, and then of course we had the kiss. And now it's very interesting, and I used yet again another reason for the Roy Kent comparison on my end would be that again it's kind of like him trying to become Roy in a sense, even subconsciously, where he kind of does. He doesn't. I don't think he does that kiss intentionally, but he does do the mirror spit where he was kind of summoning confidence and everything. So he did that, and that was like a reveal, or he did that, and then he's just trying to live with it. So he's just kind of boosting his confidence with the spitting on the mirror thing.
Yeah, the spinning on the mirror thing is such an interesting, like, creative choice for how Nick Mohammed, the actor who plays Nate, did it. I'm trying to remember if he talked about that specific creative decision, but I feel like to me it's like when he spits in the mirror, it's like part of it's like metaphorically he's spitting on himself, and also it's kind of also like for rough and tumble like football guys or just really athletes, they just spit out openly to spittoon or just whatever. So
yeah, it's like the baseball like chewing tobacco gum thing,
yeah.
But that's the other thing though with the whole spitting on himself thing, where it's very fascinating that we have this great scene with the Diamond Dogs where Ted admits the panic attack and everything, and then Nate admits to Roy what happened, and Roy already knows, and he's fine with it. And I love that he is I might have him a little later actually, but the point being, he tells Roy, finds out, and he fesses up to it, and he wants punishment from Roy. Don't you Jamie just talked to her, and you wanted to kill him? Don't you want to do anything to me? Like, no, mate, we're good. And the question is again, is it part of like the self-hatred for that action, or do you think there is a hint of remorse for hurting Ted and he wants punishment for it? Like, what do you think?
Well, I think it's neither of those two. I think for me, Nate kind of felt like, hey, like I did this like alpha male, wrong thing.
Yeah.
And the fact that you didn't, it's
like, don't treat me like a child, essentially. Yeah, treat me like a man.
Think of the fact that Ted laughed at the idea of Nate being the big dog for Isaac.
Yeah, that was the big thing I call in the rewatch. I did not catch the first watch.
Yeah. It's all these microaggressions that kind of undermine like Nate's confidence in him being like a fully capable guy, a male.
Yeah.
The whole Taste of Athens, like, hey, and I guess when him being with Rupert, considering, he doesn't have the understanding of like, well, I mean, he knows what's reported, so he knows that Rupert's cheating and all that stuff, but Rupert is kind of like this dark, he's I think for a certain section of guys in the show and real life would be someone that would be someone that those type of guys would idolize, if you know what I'm talking about. Like they're like, oh, he's rich, successful, can do what he wants, even if he's personally a horrible human being. Just the fact that he has like high status and high wealth, and those are the things that like, motivated Nate to join West Ham.
Another catch too is like he poached him at the funeral. If you noticed, he was whispering to him at that too. Again, just the fact that he was kind of planning it that far back.
Also, consider what's the old. Can you remember when Ted does the confession about the panic attack?
Yeah,
and everyone else does their confessions.
Mm-hmm.
Nate's confession isn't really confessing a fault.
Yeah.
You remember what the confession was, right, Blue Dragon?
Luckily, I confused it with the later one, so you might have to.
His confession was like the ideas basically pretending to come up with ideas on the spot, but they're ideas.
Oh right, yeah, that one. Yeah. Yes,
but he
right.
says but he does kind of boast but they're good ideas I've had for months.
So there you go. So it's against ego.
Yeah, and everyone else admitted something that put them in a.
Yeah, like Roy doesn't read the reports. I feel what was Beers? Oh, Beers was a mushroom, right?
Yeah, and Ted had the panic attack, and Higgins forgot to do the transfer deadline.
Yeah,
freaking didn't get a player. Yeah,
and of course that's what leads to Nate telling Trent telling the story to Trent Krim, the Independent.
Yeah, go on.
I wonder if there's a version of when they were breaking down the season, if there was a version of the ending that had instead of just Ted's panic attack leaked out, but also the other stuff leaked out.
Oh, you mean from all four of them? Three of them really, but
yeah, because that would have. Well, it's all four of them because it's Higgins, Beard, Ted.
Oh right, sorry, I forgot.
I wonder if there was maybe if they thought about maybe if not them losing because they needed to be promoted to go in the championship the third season, but maybe this would have been something where they win, but maybe not, but win by a hair, and people are still on the fence or aggravated by Richmond, and then that's where all the news drops, and then that's where the Empire Strikes Back thing comes into play.
So I just want to re-emphasize, man, I thought it was so powerfully done where Trent Grimm was just in the form of text. Trent Grimm, the Independent, was.
You have to say the Independent.
Yep. In just the fact that in text form, my soul was crying at him breaking the big credo of the reporter, and we learned that he was fired because he revealed the source. It's on your honor sort of thing. He told Ted because he has all the respect in the world for him. He says I think he phrased as a reporter, we're running with this. As a friend, I'm going to tell you the source.
Basically,
someone who respects you, I'm going to tell you the source.
I don't think was Talkin fired, or did he just resign from his position?
I don't. It sounded like he's. Oh, yes, Jacob.
No, well, basically what he was saying was I'm telling you this up front as a reporter. This is going up. But as a friend, someone who respects you, my source was Nate.
I know, yeah. I love how crushing and but still really sweet that was on Trent Grimm, the Independent's side of things, and it's. But yeah, so he's. I mean, I think he said fired, but I get a sense that he was going to resign anyway if he didn't. I'm pretty sure he said the word fired because I think Ted was like, "Oh no, what happened?" So I don't know.
Yeah, good old Trent Krim, the Independent.
But so it was a lovely moment. The fact we gave him kind of a goodbye with each other. He's like, "You can't wait to see him in the next adventure." I can't wait to see Trent Krim in the next Trent Krim Independent next season to see what has become of him. And I like a good result. I want to see him somehow report on or be there when Ted has a big.
It might have I can see him doing a podcast.
Yeah, and it would of course be called Trent Krim Independent.
Yeah.
Hopefully, anyway, it'd be a missed opportunity if they didn't.
Yeah, agreed. So Ted he kind of drags that Beard is telling him, hey, and I love that Beard's really when he finds out he wants to throw Nate out, he wants to go after.
He wants Ned's head on the pike, yeah.
Yeah, like the audience, and then
and this is but to keep in mind this is also the same episode in which Nate turns down Edwin.
No.
Wait.
Yeah, it's the same episode.
Well, no, you're saying Sam. You said Nate turns down.
I said Sam turns down. Right, I messed up the name. But yes. The same episode where Sam turns Edwin down.
Yes.
And it's when Edwin's facade is revealed. I will buy the house that you grew up in, burn it to the ground.
Defecate on it.
Yeah, I love the. By the way, it's kind of nice that Sam found out. I think Sam made the right call at the end of the day, because just finding out that guy will turn on a dime was probably better to find it out sooner rather than later, even if it is going to put a lot of trouble on him and his family.
Edwin is played so brilliantly by Sam Richardson.
I love Sam. How underrated is Sam Richardson, right?
I am surprised he hasn't blown up as of yet.
I loved him on Veep so much. He was great.
Well, he was like one of the best part. He was probably the best part of the Hocus Pocus 2. He's part of the main Blue Dragon, so he's part of the main ensemble. Here, actually, let me find out the name of the show. So Sam Richardson is on another Apple TV show. He's part of the main cast. It's called the After Party,
All right.
and
Okay.
yeah, it's on Apple TV. I've heard really good things about it. I haven't watched it, but I heard good things. And Sam Richardson in that show. But what I really appreciate about Sam Richardson, Edwin Gufu is like not him specifically, but his like handler or whoever who does like the special handshakes or whatever.
Yeah, that guy. And I love how Ted was like so disappointed. Oh man, I want to get a goodbye handshake.
Oh
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's fine. All right. Anyway, so so Ted confronts Nate, and Nate just has no remorse for hurting Ted. It's just it's the fact that he just feels utterly slighted by it. I love that Ted's given a genuine apology, but he just he just won't listen to him. He just won't do it. He says, you're full of it. And so it seems like broadly, if I were speculating, where our 3 act structure is going to pan out by the end of the day. I think it's kind of you have to assume most shows, like Bates Motel, for example, Bates Motel was planned out for a 3 act structures, and they were hoping for 5 seasons. They had a beginning, middle, end of the story planned out. Now, most shows you'd imagine would plan for 3 seasons if they somehow got past the first season. So I have to wonder how well season 3. Obviously, they have time to write season 3 as well, but I don't know if they knew it was going to be their last season or not. So, season 1 ultimately it's about forgiveness in terms of like the big conflict.
I've heard through the grapevine, just to sort of, I mean, this has just been what's through the grapevine through like
All right.
people. So apparently, this because think of it this way: 2020, the first season; 2021 was the second season, and now this year, 2023 is like the third season. And from what I've heard is that like apparently there was delays because like Jason Sudeikis has been like constantly rewriting scripts, and I wonder how much of that is just like rewriting them. I wonder how much of it is like, okay, we need to try to make sure that the third season is like as good or as heralded as the first season, or if they're trying to write in a way in which like the show could end at a third season, but it leaves the door open for, if not future seasons, then like future spin-offs for some of the characters on that show.
Yep.
But
We do need to talk about the ending of season 2, though, where the boys finally get their relegation back, where they undo their relegation.
you get the promotion.
Yes, that. Sorry, I misworded it there.
Yeah. What was ironic was the fact that they won with Nate's play, which Nate thought wouldn't work.
Talk about karma.
Well, no. It's not even karma. Yeah, it's sort of a weird sense of karma, but it's also kind of sad to think that like he's so insecure and so catastrophic. Catastrophizing. I'm trying to think of the word. It's basically he's so prone to to thinking catastrophic terms that he thought that like his
Catastrophe.
catastrophe. He thought that his like suggestion would lead to them losing and couldn't conceive of them winning out because he just thinks that like, oh, like anything that I suggest, if it doesn't turn out 100% how you can imagine it, he'll get the blame. And it's like, man, it's gonna be interesting for how Nate comes back from the darkness.
There's a question. So here's the thing. So I think season 1, our big conflict is resolved in forgiveness. Season 2, it's a refusal to forgive. Now season 3, I'm thinking we end things ultimately with Ted Lasso winning the day, and the question is, does he save Nate?
I kind of feel like he wins the day 100%. I feel like if season 1's about winning through forgiveness, season 2 is refusing to forgive. I think season 3 is like accepting. The whole thing about. Ooh, okay. The Higgins quote that actually kind of summarizes the theme of forgiveness, Blue Dragon.
Yeah. What?
Higgins' quote about his dad is like, "I love him for who he is and forgive him for who he isn't."
That was such a good. I think seriously, that was one of Higgins' great lines right there. I
Yeah,
love that line that he had.
think about what that means for Ted then for Nate. If just Ted, if Nate maybe doesn't change or maybe doesn't change enough, and it kind of things end on a more bittersweet, melancholic note where maybe Nate's not back with Richmond, but Nate's not with West Ham, and maybe it's kind of maybe I wonder if like the way the show ends is something where Nate is not 100% fully redeemed, but is not 100% fully evil or just on the dark side, and it's kind of this awkward middle space where Ted maybe there's parts of Ned, a part of that Nate that he loves, but there's parts that he has to forgive just to move on. So, and I wonder if like everyone else will kind of be on the same page.
No, it's interesting for sure. It's huh. Yeah, I was saying ultimately, I always got to wonder if. But I think you're right. We got to end on a win, but it's a question of how much collateral damage is there.
I really hope if there's any consideration for Nate to be brought back, that it's not a decision that everyone's really won over, and it's like split. It splits like Richmond in half.
Well, Jamie did come back.
I think Jamie was redeemed, but then again, he did not like turn aggressively on Ted Lasso though.
I mean, he was against Ted from the beginning, but.
Well, no, I just mean that's like not why, essentially why he left though. It was just like Jamie was like coming around on Ted, and then he was sent away.
Which he believed was Ted's fault, but it was actually obviously Rebecca's fault.
Yeah.
But now everybody's celebrating each other, and now Nate's.
It was really nice that the whole team had his back, and also, oh my god, something we have to talk about. It's literally in the image, the believe sign.
Mm-hmm.
Gets ripped in half, but also I love that all the players put their hands on the believe sign as like a show of like support of like Ted and the struggle and everything, and they all put their hands on it. It was a really beautiful gesture, and at the end of the day, Nate wins the day with his play, and he ripped the sign in half.
Do you think
he's basically Ted's come a long way from being the out of town Yank?
Oh yeah.
Do you think Richmond will win the championship? I don't think they'll win, but I think West Ham will win. But it'll be a Pyrrhic victory. Like Nate will feel disillusioned and alone, even when he still won.
I think that's a really good call. I'm rooting for, again, it's the whole point of the show. I'm rooting for him to win.
I feel like the show isn't about them, like, because I feel like the core tenet is like it's not about the wins and losses, right? And so I feel like it would be kind of narratively predictable for them to win. I could see it where West Ham wins, but Nate doesn't feel good about it, and for Richmond, they come out still feeling strong, and I feel like the team, because the thing is, like the whole town is always obsessed with like them winning and losing, and if Richmond lost, I would love for still the town to like be congratulatory and praising.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, I think you're kind of selling me on that. Yeah,
because then the ultimate message is like about. It's not, it's not a victory and loss, but it's in just the journey of being a better person. And through Ted being part of Richmond, he has made an influence upon this like very cynical, very dog world to where even though they lost a championship to a team that was headed by like a former assistant coach, they still won in the moral sense, and that's always like the ending message for like good sports movies, like Rocky. The first Rocky, he loses, but he still won in a sense of earning the respect and admiration and of the public. So I think for Richmond championship, I think they will ultimately win the trust and respect of the public, and people would give them still a parade, and I think that's a really satisfying ending.
Okay. Yeah, I seriously, man, I think that's a really great idea for how to end things. I'm kind of rooting for that a little bit more now. It's yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think we've kind of covered everything. So, is there any big speculation you want to get in there? Because again, it's the eve of Ted Lasso, so we are.
I am very curious about where Roy and Keely's relationship goes, because
Yeah. So we ended on them kind of a little separated. Like, well, they're still together, but they are literally in different geographical places.
Mhm. I kind of hope they. I guess I hope if they're not together anymore at the end of the season, it's not like they're at least like friends.
Well, why wouldn't they be? They really,
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
They seem to.
It just felt like the whole like them being apart just felt like, okay, there has to be a point at which that becomes a problem.
Do you think she goes back to Jamie?
I don't think she go back to Jamie. I think it could end in a way where all three of them are not together in a relationship, but are still much of each other's lives.
Something does occur to me. It makes me think you're right, and I kind of hate that you're right, but I think I know. Uh, the teacher, he might end up with the teacher,
No,
Mrs. Bowen, because
I don't
Mrs.
think.
Bowen really likes him.
No, I don't think he ends up with a teacher. I think
Really?
no. I think I mean, for me, I think the show doesn't go into that state. That's like a very network TV thing to do. I think the show is a little bit smarter than that. Outside of, in my opinion, like the whole Sam and Rebecca thing. I think it could be a case where all three of them are not involved with each other romantically, but all three of them are kind of like have so much history together that they're still like love each other platonically. If that makes sense.
Well, I mean that does make sense. I mean they can go that way, but it really feels like they weren't in a bad place when we ended the season. So I mean,
I
what's
mean,
the logic of why break up?
it could be less of a bad place and just more like the more realistic thing where it's like, hey, Keely has her own life path, and there was tension about Keely not giving space, and it could maybe be the thing where like Keely wants to. If anything, it could be an interesting reversal of roles where
Of Ted, of what Ted's problem is right now with his
no, no,
wife.
no.
Well, at least
When I say reversal, I'm referring to Keely and Rebecca, where Keely at the end of the third season could be like the career focused oriented woman, and Rebecca could be the in a position where she's romantically, with someone, and more where Keely's was at the end of the first season.
okay. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I was kind of looking at it when you were saying that. I was looking at it a little bit more in the terms of like how separation kind of affects a relationship.
Well,
But
I think it's separation, but not. But I think because neither Keely nor Roy have the kind of issues that was present in like Ted and his wife's relationship, where it's like, oh, like there's always this particular outlook. I think it's more just that Roy and Keely are very two different individuals, and that they'll even if they're not together romantically, they're still like will root each other. Like, and I think that's going to be, and I think that's a very would be an interesting place to end the show, because typically for any shows that have like couples that are either on or off, or going to the final season, you kind of like formalize the relationship into like, oh, they get married, they have kids or whatever. And I think the third season could do something interesting where maybe the relationship ends, but it doesn't end in anything dramatic in a dramatic fashion, but just more like people grow apart or grow differently. And I think especially with Sam, like Sam starting his own business, so it could be a thing where like maybe even though like they lose a championship, for some individual players, they might have lives. They might start lives or careers outside of football. Because Sam has a restaurant, maybe Roy does like something specific to his passions. Keely, maybe Jamie. Like it could be a thing where like the show ends because not to say football is unimportant, but there's more to football. There's just life in general. So it could be the case where some players just like move beyond football to other things. And maybe for Ted, he moves away from football by going back to Kansas to, be close to his family.
Yeah.
huh.
That
I
sounds
mean,
like a good.
that does bring up about a good point. Like, should the end of our story be Ted returning home, like returning to Kansas, returning stateside? Because he's there for a job, and I'm not saying he couldn't stay there. I mean, we can keep him there, but it does beg the question: like, is it going to be almost like a Mary Poppins thing where he's gone over and he's I love we made the Mary Poppins joke, by the way, with Dick Van Dyke. That was also rather funny. But the point being is it's the fact that he comes over, he makes an impact, and then he kind of toddles off, leaving everyone hopefully better, at least in a point of growth. That he's kind of cause chain
Well, but the
reaction
thing
for it.
is, the whole reason he was in England in the first place was to gain distance, and
Yeah, which now
a place
yeah.
where he can be back in Kansas and not be with his wife anymore, but be in his son's life, and maybe
Yeah.
he's in a relationship where he just lives his life, being single and just be happy with his family,
It kind of feels like we should go there, right?
I think it's the most mature and nuanced way of ending Ted's arc and not having to go into the like, oh, Ted gets like with sassy.
Yeah, I know, right? Like he gets with sassy and he stays there, and
Yeah.
yeah, because it'd be kind of mean to make his wife have to commute to the UK every time
No,
she
I,
wants to
I
see her
think
son or something.
I can see the third season ending in a more melancholic way. It's not like an actual happy ending, but more in a way where it's like football, even though they didn't win, they won something more bigger. And that's something that it's hard to I try to articulate or communicate that in how I think it would end. But you guys know what I'm going for, where it's more like, oh, they may not have won the championship, but they won on life.
Right.
And I bet you dollars to donuts though that the end shot of the third season and thus the last season is going to be a close up on the belief sign, and then the lights turn off.
Basically, like Cheers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, we're closed.
No. Like the camera just closes in on the belief sign.
No, that's the last line of that. That's the last line of Cheers. Is sorry, we're closed.
Yeah. But what I'm thinking more is just like the camera pans to like the belief sign wherever it's located, and then turn to fade to black.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. Did anything else to say, guys?
Just to kind of wrap things up again, we're very much looking forward to the third season. It'll be my first experience watching it week to week, so that's something.
And we maybe should have said. Did we say? I don't know if I don't remember if we said this in the live, but up until the end of tomorrow, we're holding a poll whether or not to do it episode by episode or just one long video at the end of the third season.
Yeah, we did not say that at the top, but we mentioned on the debate. But yeah, folks, last chance because right now we're kind of looking at doing one at the end, but right now it's because we only have like very few votes. So if anyone wants to really has a firm opinion, if you folks want us to cover this week by week, I mean, reflected in little votes on the community page. So you want to be an Imagineer, and we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just kind of wait till all is said and done, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, so Ted Lasso just excellent up and comer. For the streaming shows. So not just streaming shows. It was a very solid series, and again, kind of an example of what we should be doing more of in the medium. I mean, the advent of streaming is limited episodes, which allows us to dig into characters, to kind of focus on what matters, kind of cut the story fat, and I think we did a lot of that. It's again. It's a show kind of unlike any other in a very refreshing way, and I think we had a good time talking about it. At least I like to think so.
He did.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll be all, folks. And remember, if you can only remember one word in this little existence, believe.
Believe in Ted Lasso. Believe in your friends, and just believe.
These are you later.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.